day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else.
We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride.
Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's tonight, 9 till 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, hello and welcome to GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua, and for the next few hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me in the next hour, broadcaster and journalist Annie Kelly, and also broadcaster and author Christine Hamilton. In a few moments' time, we'll be going head-to-head in the clash with the Director of Climate Media Coalition, Donna McCarthy, and also the Reform UK Deputy Leader, Ben Habib. But before we get started, let's get your latest news headlines.
Nana, thank you and good afternoon. The top stories from the GB newsroom. Transport Secretary Mark Harper says Rishi Sunak will lead the Tories into the next election. It comes after senior Tories were reported to have attempted to downplay claims of a Conservative plot to replace the Prime Minister with Penny Mordaunt. The move would mean a fourth leader of the party in just 5 years. Mr Harper says that unlike Labour, the Conservatives have a plan on delivering for the country.
We've got to show them, by the time of the election, two things. We've got to show them that we've got a plan, the plan is working and it's delivering for them. And I think we can see that it is on inflation and on taxes. We've also then got to show them that the Labour Party doesn't have a plan and will be a big risk. You know, for example, we know the Labour Party wants to spend £28 billion on their green plan. They've hidden the price tag now, but they don't know how to pay for it. That would mean taxes going up.
But Shadow Paymaster General Jonathan Ashworth told GB News the government's priorities are all wrong.
Rishi Sunak is not acting in the national interest. It's reckless, it's irresponsible. He should name the day of a general election and stabilise matters. At the moment, he's more preoccupied with his own leadership and saving his own skin than governing in the national interest. And I think after 14 years, this is a pretty discredited government. He needs to name the date. I mean, but if he doesn't name the date soon, we could have a leadership election soon.
Well, speaking at the Liberal Democrats' spring conference today, leader Sir Ed Davey accused the Prime Minister of giving up.
Who knows? Maybe, despite what he says, Rishi will call the election tomorrow or next week. I certainly hope so. The country can't wait a moment longer to see the back of this terrible government.
The Ministry of Defence says Grant Shapps was forced to abandon a trip to southern Ukraine last week for security reasons. British intelligence warned of a credible missile threat from Russia, saying the Kremlin had got wind of his visit, according to the Sunday Times. Mr Shapps was due to travel to Odessa a day after a missile hit the city, while the Ukrainian president and the Greek Prime Minister were visiting. 5 people were killed in the explosions, according to Ukrainian authorities. Meanwhile, the Latvian Prime Minister has told the Sunday Telegraph that Britain should consider conscription and a total defence model to deter Russian aggression. Latvia reintroduced the model last year, with all able-bodied men required to complete 11 months of military service. However, in January, the UK Armed Forces Minister James Heappey said any talk of the UK introducing conscription to the army if NATO goes to war with Russia was nonsense. That as the Russian president is tightening his grip on power in a Russian election, despite thousands of opponents staging a noon protest at polling stations. The widow of Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny was among those protesting, including outside the Russian embassy in Berlin. About 74 protesters have been arrested in Russian cities on the final day of voting today. The election comes just over 2 years since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Work on the M25 in Surrey is on schedule to reopen for Monday rush hour. National Highways says good progress is being made after the unprecedented closure. Motorists reported miles of tailbacks yesterday on the approach to the 5-mile closure between junctions 10 and 11. A volcano in Iceland has erupted for a fourth time in just 3 months. Previous eruptions destroyed roads and forced towns to evacuate. Fountains of molten rock soared into the night sky from fissures in the ground. Authorities had warned for weeks that an eruption was imminent just south of Iceland's capital, Reykjavik. And Steve Harley, best known as the frontman of British rock band Cockney Rebel, has died at the age of 73.
Come up and sing it to make me smile.
The band enjoyed success in 1975 with the #1 hit, Make Me Smile. Steve Harley had still been touring until recently, but had to cancel dates to have treatment for cancer. His daughter Greta says he died peacefully with his family by his side. For the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now back to Nana.
Thank you, Tatiana. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. OK, this is getting beyond ridiculous. Trans women, which, as we know, are biological males, are apparently now going to be included as women in a push to get more female chief executives into the FTSE 100 by next year. Now, the campaign, called 25 by 25, is an initiative headed by Chief Executive Tara Kemmerling-Jones, whose mission is to get 25 female chief executives running blue-chip companies by 2025, and it's backed by major companies including Unilever, NatWest and BP. You couldn't make this up. Tara said anyone who identifies as a woman is a woman, though she stressed that 25 by 25 were not an authority on the subject. She said, "Our focus is on succession and talent planning, using gender broadly as an indicator. To suggest anything else would be very misleading." Misleading? That is misleading. What's the point? Seriously, if anyone can say that they're a woman, then why bother with this at all? It just makes a mockery of the whole thing. The figures will simply be nonsense. This will obviously skew the information and defeats the object of the goal itself. And also, will the trans woman have a salary of a man or a woman? As we know, there are still major gender pay gap inequalities, and it will be a complete misrepresentation of women and on boards of pay and average salaries. Will the trans woman accept a pay cut? Of course not. They'll simply have the benefits of a male but take up the space of a female. It's absurd. Only last month, Tory MPs accused the financial services watchdog, the FCA, of putting women's rights at risk by encouraging banks to collect staff data based on self-identified gender rather than biological sex. Of course, it was met with resistance from some 40 MPs and peers who wrote to the Chancellor to argue that the FCA was taking an activist approach to its diversity policies. But this is everywhere. This morning I read about a school, a health nurse who claimed that not all people who have babies might call themselves a she or a woman or a mum. Really? What do they call themselves? She was walking through school. She said that walking through a school in a skirt and letting your hair grow when actually people previously knew you as a boy, well, that's incredibly brave. That's what she said. But I think there's an element of attention-seeking, if I'm totally honest. But the worry is it could lead to a path of medical transition when most people going through puberty are struggling with their gender identity in any case. The podcast that this lady said this on is aimed at school nurses, and the series is run by the Digital Health Foundation. I've got to say, thank God for the likes of Liz Truss and Kemi Badenoch, who are fighting to protect biological women from this madness. Liz Truss has tabled a bill which would have banned puberty blockers, protected single-sex spaces and prevented teachers from helping a child to change gender. Biology trumps ideology, and it's time to take a stand. A man can never be a woman, and a woman can never be a man. Right, so before we get stuck into the debates over the next hour, let me introduce you to my clashers. Joining me today, Director of Climate Media and Coalition, Donica McCarthy, and also Reform UK Deputy Leader Ben Habib. They'll be going head-to-head in just a moment. Coming up, could a change of leaders stop the Tories suffering a wipeout at the election? Conservative MPs are reportedly plotting to replace Rishi Sunak with Penny Mordaunt. If they're successful, she would be the fourth leader, or is it the fifth? I don't know. The fourth and the fifth, or the fourth and the fifth? The fourth in 5 years. years. And the Lib Dems say that they're the only party offering real change. Sir Ed Davey spoke at the Spring Conference this morning, calling for transformational change, whatever that means, and urging the Prime Minister to call an election now. Do you agree? Then a key NATO ally has said that Britain should consider bringing back conscription into the military to deter Russian aggression. And the Golden Chippy in Greenwich has been asked to remove their mural depicting the Union flag being held by a fish. More on that later in the show. A flag held by a fish flag. Well, that's coming up in the next hour. Tell me what you think on everything we're discussing. Email gbviews@gbnews.com or tweet me at gbnews. Right, I'm joined now by my Clashers Director of Climate Media Coalition, Donica McCarthy, and also former Reform UK Deputy Leader Ben Habib. Right, so I'm going to start with you, Ben Habib. Good to see you again.
Good to see you. Good afternoon.
What do you make of a lot of this trans stuff that is going down, and in particular the FTSE 100 looking to actually label the top 25 women, but include men in that?
So the FCA, the Financial Conduct Authority's promotion of trans ideology is alongside the promotion of lots of minority rights, and it's embedded in our regulatory and legal framework now through the environmental, social and governance obligations that companies, institutions, education establishment, the armed forces, our police forces, every single entity in this country is required to promote this sort of ideology through diversity, equality and inclusion, which is the social aspect of environmental social governance, which, as I say, is part of our regulatory framework. So this is not some kind of social fad that's just grown up over the last few years. This has been put into place through government regulations and legislation. And for Liz Truss to want new legislation to ban as admirable as her aim is to stop, transformational operations taking place, actually what we need in this country is the repealing of lots of legislation that's gone into place already to create this environment. And of course, what you want in the FTSE 100 boardrooms are the best directors fulfilling those jobs so that we have the most efficient, most profitable companies in the United Kingdom, so we have prosperity across the board. And similarly with the armed forces, you want the best jet fighter pilots, the best navigators, the best, gun shooters. And what we've got to step away from is the promotion of people based on their physical characteristics or their own self-identification at the cost of them doing their jobs properly. We're in a country at the moment which is facing economic disaster, national debt at a post-World War II high, taxation at a post-World War II high, spending out of control by the government. And what are we focusing on? This kind of nonsense. Because
we haven't got time for this, have we?
We haven't.
We need to be focusing on the best and the most brilliant minds.
That's what we should be doing.
The things that we need. But the fact that but what do you think of the fact that they're almost trying to mask the fact that somebody is not a man and to put them in a list of the top 25 to achieve a goal?
I know.
I mean,
it's daft as brushes, isn't it? It's the undermining of common sense in society. A man self-identifies as a woman and therefore gets a job on the basis that he's coming from a minority interest group. The whole thing is just absurd.
Well, let's see what Donica has to say. Donica McCarthy.
Yeah, I wouldn't say the whole thing is absurd. I think we have to remember where this came from. I was just chatting to Ben before we came on. I grew up in Ireland in the 60s and 70s. I was a gay person.
Happy St Patrick's Day.
Thank you. You too.
Where's your green? Not wearing green.
On you. And I grew up in a society that was life imprisonment with hard labour if you're having sex with your partner. And also had some friends personally murdered in gay bashing careers. So for me, we struggled hard to get freedom and to get fairness, and to actually, my friends were being fired because they were gay. So Ben's quite right. We should be getting the best people for the best jobs, but because of our inherited discrimination, often women and gay people and trans people are excluded from the best jobs because the old boys club excluded them, and it excluded the talent. What we need is a happy medium where we actually allow the talent from everybody in, but don't don't promote people just because they have to come from a protected background.
But what do you make of the top 25 in the FTSE women in the FTSE 100 companies, including men, so people who are trans women, but they are males? I mean, this is what I'm talking about. Because as you said, you have you've pointed towards the fact that, yes, there seems to be an old boys club and it's only the men that seem to get in. But isn't this just simply extending some form of extension of the old boys club, which will actually push women out?
I certainly wouldn't want to see the definition excluding women from the percentage. I think that would be a disaster. Why not have three groups of people that we're looking at? Is there any trans people in leadership roles? Are there women in leadership roles? Are there men? But the other point I do agree with Ben on is that the amount of media bandwidth occupied by this tiny issue affecting a tiny group of people when there are huge issues in the world.
I think
Ben
you're
talks
wrong.
about economy, I talk about climate. This week, scientists said we've had every month for the last year, we've had the hottest temperature ever. The oceans are beginning to get so hot.
Don't start us on this, Donica, because
therefore the issues that we should be concentrating are the big ones. Like Ben talks about economy, I talk about the environment. And I think this trans issue is tiny.
I mean, it is tiny.
Can I just say, I don't think it's tiny.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting that two men would be saying that. I mean,
no, hold on. I'm not
I
saying.
think it's interesting that you think it's tiny, but actually it isn't, because we are women. And I think actually, as 51% of the world, I think, are women, and that affects all of us.
Around 1% are trans.
OK, hold on.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about biological reality, not one that you've decided you are. And that's fine. I'm not saying that issue doesn't exist. But my point is this, that you called it a small issue, and it isn't. And for women, it's a big issue. Because if at the top of the top 25 companies, which are supposed to be finding women, you're allowed to include men, just like in any sport, that will then suddenly include men, that it pushes out women.
Well, I said I actually agree with you on that point. I actually saying we should retain the assessment of how many women are actually in place, how many trans
and the
people,
salaries as well.
And I totally agree on equality. So I think we're actually almost in the same place.
We're not really, because you said it was a minor issue, and I think many women...
1% is minor.
Well, I'm saying the trans people might be a minority, and I do agree that there seems to be an extremely lot amount of time spent on it, but that's because of the effect it will have on women in the long run. If you suddenly start including men into this scenario, and men can be called women, then it pushes out the women.
And I think that, the number of trans people in the country is very small, 0.4% of the population. But the trans ideology, which doesn't come alone, it comes along with diversity, equality, and inclusion in its broader sense, which is the promotion, effectively, of all minorities over and above, and if necessary, to the detriment of the organisation in which they're being promoted, and therefore the majority of the country. And that's where it's got to stop. I absolutely agree with you that there should be no prejudice exercised against gay people, or indeed people who self-identify as another sex. That is a thing that does happen. But you do not correct that inequality by progressive discrimination, because what you're doing is embedding discrimination in our system. What we need is to drill relentlessly that all of us are equal in the rights that we have. That's what we've got to do.
The problem with that, Ben, is that then you leave...
Why is that a problem?
The problem is, if you don't actually look at how you move forward from centuries of discrimination against gay people, women and trans people...
But there's no discrimination against gay people.
Then what
I don't think there's any discrimination against gay people in this country any longer.
Look at him, look at the shock on his face.
Well,
I don't think so.
Well, I will say to you, Ben, if I walk down the street holding hands with my partner, I'm scared for my life.
Why?
Really?
No, it's lovely. Where is it? What street are you concerned about? Whereabout is this?
Because it's like women. If you speak to women, a lot of women are scared. A lot of my women friends are scared to walk on the streets. I've had two friends.
That's not the same.
No, well, hang on.
That's not the same.
You're saying
you're both men.
You're arguing.
No. You said you compared it to women. No. I'm in charge. I decide who finishes. Do you understand?
That's progressive discrimination. The presenter gets the last word.
You asked me why, and I said why is because when I was 20 years old, I had two friends of mine murdered.
I understand that, yes.
And I carry that with me, and I see the amount of abuse online as an environmentalist.
But you're looking at online. You're talking about that's totally different.
As an environmentalist, I get a phenomenal amount of homophobic abuse online. And secondly, talking about outside my house, just after Brexit, I had people homophobic abuse. I was terrified of my life. I had to jump into the school across the road just 3 years ago, because a man was attacking me because of my sexuality. It is still real for us. And so therefore, I would argue these things still happen. We both want to get to, well, all three of us want to get to the same place, where people get promoted on merit. Unfortunately, after centuries of discrimination, we're not there yet.
Well, we might not be there yet fully, but it depends what you're talking about. You've conflated promotion with being attacked, and I think these are very different subjects, right? Being promoted in a job for merit is different to being worried about walking in a street because you're gay. I don't think those two things are together in terms of discrimination. I think they're very different. And actually, as a woman is actually the most vulnerable of the sexes. So to invite a man into a female-only space, or to have a space that is designated as female, and to enable men to be in that space, I think it's to the detriment to females.
And you're so right, because this debate undermines our ability to move forward coherently. We're becoming incoherent as a society. You know, a man self-identifying as a woman enables a company to fulfill its, in my view, wrong target towards having more women on the board. I mean, the whole thing is ridiculous.
Where I think where there is agreement...
I've just got about 20 seconds. We know
where the agreement is on sport. Sport is an issue. I think we must have to retain fairness for women.
I'll tell you what the agreement
is. But we must remember the mental health of the young trans people watching this show.
But you've also got to remember that has a mental health effect on women as well. So you say that,
let's try
but no. But this affects the mental health of women.
So we need to.
And women are the most vulnerable, not trans men, because women are the weaker sex, and trans women are actually biological men. OK, so it's 21 minutes past 3 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Coming up, Tories are reportedly plotting to replace the Prime Minister with Penny Mordaunt. So could a change of leaders stop them suffering a wipeout in the next election? But next, we'll be live in York, where the Lib Dems are holding their spring conference. They want Rishi Sunak to call an election now. Do you agree?
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. Every night from 11 p.m.
Is a debate on gender really a far-right issue?
Far right. I'm so bored of that phrase, you know what I mean? Like, anyone who talks about... anyone who acknowledges that there are two sexes is suddenly far right, because that's what Hitler and Mussolini were all about. This question from Shirley is, of course, about Labour. They've been accused of being undemocratic because they pressured a pub into cancelling a debate, and this debate features Kelly J. Keane, who's been on this show a couple of times, and she's a campaigner, and she was just on the panel, and then they got a letter saying that they couldn't do it because Kelly J. Keane apparently attracts far-right groups. Now, they've tried this trick before, but because some awful, ghastly neo-Nazi types turned up near to an event that she was holding in Australia, they kind of tried to blame that on her and suggest that the two were the same thing. They weren't. That was an opportunistic group turning up to... They're not... Neo-Nazis aren't pro-feminist. They're not pro an event called Let Women Speak. That's just ridiculous.
New Zealand's TV blurred her touching her zip because they said that her touching her zip was a far-right dog whistle because she's making that symbol.
Yeah, but she wasn't making the symbol, she was just adjusting a zip.
Yeah, and also, this isn't a far-right symbol.
I mean, that was incredible because she obviously wasn't making that symbol anyway. She was just adjusting a top. But this New Zealand news channel blurred out the hand so that they could pretend that it was some horrible ghastly... Yeah. I mean, this is
she's talked about having voted Labour in the past. She's so not far-right.
But also, even if she were right-wing, which she isn't, why would they be banning a panel where there's a discussion about one of the most important issues of our day? What are Labour playing at here?
They're anti-democratic, aren't they? They're just kind of playing whack-a-mole with things they don't like. I think maybe I'll write to the pub and say I do want to see Kelly J. Keane there.
Yeah, but they won't listen to you if you say that, will they? Because you've got the unfashionable opinion, Chris.
Well, I'm the unfashionable workplace.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. If you just tuned in, welcome. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua, and it's fast approaching 25 minutes after 3 o'clock. Now, in what is shaping up to be a contentious election year, the leader of the Liberal Democrats, Sir Ed Davey, has been speaking at their spring conference. He called for transformational change and to bring the blue wall tumbling down, taking aim at Rishi Sunak and questions over his leadership. Let's have a listen.
Now, of course, we don't yet know when election day will be. We don't know because it's in the hands of just one man. It's pretty much the only thing left that Rishi Sunak controls. He certainly doesn't control his party, certainly not his cabinet, certainly not the healthcare crisis or the economy.
Is that the same Ed Davey that went AWOL after the post office thing?
He's back.
He's back. Well, joining me now is GB News political correspondent Olivia Utley. Olivia, so you are there at the conference. What kind of things have they been saying?
Well, we heard quite a lot of what we would expect from Ed Davey. He talked about sewage in rivers. That's a big campaign argument for the Lib Dems. He talked about local dentistry. That's another point that the Lib Dems have been making again and again. Politically, I thought what was interesting is that all of the personal attacks on politicians were aimed at the Conservative Party rather than the Labour Party. There was a lot of hate directed at Rishi, also at Penny Mordaunt, Jeremy Hunt, Michael Gove, all seats where the Lib Dems are planning to target at the next election. There was very little anger directed at the Labour Party, and actually Ed Davey made multiple comparisons with 1997. He suggested that he wanted the election to be a once-in-a-generation election, just like in 1997. Well, in 1997, the Lib Dems won Ed Davey's seat of Kingston and Surbiton, but in the general election as a whole, it was, of course, a Labour landslide. Could it be that the Lib Dems are gearing up for a Labour landslide? And if so, are they trying to keep Labour on side? Both parties have denied that there could be a sort of official pact between the pair of them at an election. But it wouldn't be beyond the scope of imagination to imagine a bit of tactical voting going on, perhaps, at the election. And the very fact that Ed Davey's ire was directed solely at the Conservatives and not really at Labour at all suggests that he knows that one way or another he has got to keep Keir Starmer on side.
Maybe he's suspecting that there might be, well, a kind of hung parliament. Maybe he's thinking that he might have to go into coalition with the Labour Party. How are the Labour Party doing in terms of their electoral prospects?
Well, for Keir Starmer, essentially, the ducks just keep lining up. I mean, obviously, last year we saw the pretty much implosion of the Scottish National Party with the dramatic resignation of Nicola Sturgeon. Humza Yousaf is doing very, very badly in the polls. It is expected that Labour will pick up lots and lots of seats across the border in Scotland. Meanwhile, as we are seeing south of the border here in England, the Tories are imploding too. The papers today are full of briefings and counter-briefings, lots and lots of infighting going on between Rishi Sunak and actually members of his own cabinet. There are rumours that Penny Mordaunt is pitching herself to be a leader before the next election. And Rishi Sunak's aides are saying that she's a vessel, she has no beliefs, she was on the wrong side of the trans argument, etc. So all of this infighting going on, the Tories sinking and sinking in the polls. They're now at the lowest level that they've been at since Liz Truss's disastrous budget last year. And Labour, obviously, is just coming up in the middle. There are those who say, the Tory loyalists who I've spoken to, who say that come the general election, just being not the Conservatives won't be enough for Labour. They have to have their own message. And, you know, you could argue that perhaps Keir Starmer has flip-flopped a bit on some core issues, and up until now, the Labour's message has essentially been, well, we're not the other lot, we'll give you a change. But to be honest, it's looking like that might just be enough to give Labour a clean sweep in the next general election, with all of Labour's enemies falling around the party. a Labour landslide is looking pretty likely.
Well, listen, thank you so much, Olivia Utley. She's out there at the Lib Dems. I've forgotten what they are, because are they yellow or orange? What colour's their banner? Thank you so much, Olivia. Really good to talk to you. Right, so I'm joined now by the Director of Climate Media Coalition, Donica McCarthy, and also Reform UK's Deputy Leader, Ben Habib. Donica, you said that you are a Liberal.
Small L.
Small L.
Yeah, I left the Liberal Democrat Party 20 years ago. However, I think what's really interesting here, he talks about transformational. What it would be transformational if we could actually get a party pushing through proportional representation, so the British public's views are represented in Parliament. I think what's the point about that Labour could win a massive majority of maybe 200-300 seats on a minority of the votes shows how broken our electoral system is. The idea that Ben's Reform Party could earn 12% of the vote and not have a single MP. It's absolutely outrageous. And both Labour under Starmer and Tories under Sunak both oppose fair votes. Isn't that interesting?
Well, you always would do when you are the one who's winning. So if you're the leading party, you wouldn't want proportional representation. Why would you?
No, well, I mean, you wouldn't. I used to be a big fan of first past the post, and we were discussing this before I came in, and you were of the view that maybe I've changed my position because I'm now Deputy Leader of Reform UK, but that's not the case. I mean, I think first past the post, when you look at the last 27 years of government now, first past the post, whenever it's produced a strong government, actually they've gone on to do really bad things. And, you know, Boris Johnson's government with the 80-seat majority he had, I think is going to be looked at in time as a really bad period for the Conservative Party. And he had that massive majority. So, in some respects, I do agree that, you know, PR is the way forward. But we've got to have a PR system that doesn't produce a mismatch of basically socialism. You know, if you look across to Europe, you don't really get strong government of any kind in Europe, and that's the problem.
Well, listen, we'll carry on discussing that. If you've just joined us, welcome. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. It is The Clash. I'm Nana Akua. Coming up, should Britain bring back conscription? A key NATO ally says that we need to consider it in order to deter Russian aggression. But next, Conservative backbenchers are reportedly plotting to get rid of the Prime Minister and replace him with Penny Mordaunt. Could a new leader save them from electoral oblivion? But first, let's get your latest news headlines with Aaron Armstrong.
Very good afternoon to you. It's 3:31. I'm Aaron Armstrong. Rishi Sunak will lead the Tories into the next election. That's according to the Transport Secretary, Mark Harper. Senior Tories have been attempting to downplay reports of a Conservative plot to replace the Prime Minister with Penny Mordaunt. Well, the move would mean a fourth leader of the party in just 5 years. Mr Harper says, unlike Labour, the Conservatives have a plan on delivering for the country. The widow of the Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny has been cheered by voters outside the Russian embassy in Berlin. Yulia Navalny was protesting on the final day of voting for the country's next president, Vladimir Putin, who's been in power as either Prime Minister or President since 1999, is almost certain to win another 6-year term with a landslide victory. The election comes just 2 years since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. There have been reports of arrests in Russia. Work on the M25 in Surrey is on schedule to reopen for Monday morning rush hour. And National Highways says good progress has been made after unprecedented closures. Motorists reported miles of tailback yesterday on the approach to the 5-mile closure between junctions 10 and 11 in Surrey. And Steve Harley, best known as the frontman of the British rock band Cockney Rebel, has died at the age of 73.
Come up and see me to make me smile.
Well, that was the big hit, the band enjoying success with Make Me Smile in 1975, a #1 hit. Steve Harley has been touring up until recently, but cancelled dates to have treatment for cancer. His daughter Greta says he died peacefully with his family by his side. We can get more on all of our stories with our GB News alerts. Scan the QR code on your screen now or go to our website. Now, it's back to Nana.
Thank you, Aaron. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up, a fish and chip shop has been ordered to remove a Union flag mural because council officials deemed it inappropriate. I'll bring you the details. Next, Tory MPs are reportedly plotting to get rid of Rishi Sunak. Could a change of leader stop them being wiped out at the polls?
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. Every night from 11 p.m.
Welcome back to Headliners. And Paul, we're going to get straight into Monday's mail for some good old-fashioned, traditional male breastfeeding.
Yeah. To answer the question, what is the latest woke hell, Josh? Row as hospitals say hormone-filled milk from trans women who were born male is just as good for a baby as the real thing. It's possible for men, if they pump themselves full of estrogen, to grow larger breast tissue, and they often do.
Or you just eat lots of burgers.
Exhibit A. And once you've done that, it is actually then possible to express or lactate a liquid. Okay. If to that liquid you then add another load of pills, medication, chemicals, whatever, that lactation juice can be fed to a baby.
We don't really... This is not for the sake of the baby. The baby has no benefits from this whatsoever. The studies are very weak on it. It's a bit worrying because, you know, when hospitals started indulging in homeopathy and having, the NHS had homeopathic hospitals, that was worrying because they're supposed to be a trusted authority. And before saying something like this, there should be an awful lot of study done.
I want to shame this hospital. This is
whether it's necessary.
University Hospital Sussex NHS Foundation Trust. That's who it is. And they have written one of the stupidest sentences I have read aloud in the 2 years that I've been privileged to do this show. It says, the term human milk is meant to be neutral and not gender biased.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
That's incredible.
Yep.
Oh, my God, we're laughing at you.
I mean, and as someone says here, babies are not props. And that's the scary thing. And when we're not focusing primarily on the health of a baby.
No, but the feeling of a person doing it rather than... It's a bit of an odd way to go, isn't it? So...
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From 10 a.m. every Saturday, we want to make you think and we want to make you laugh.
So we will give you all the top stories.
Now we start with a story that has shocked the nation this week.
But we're also going to make it light and fun and bring some entertainment in to make your Saturday morning nice and restful.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
"37 minutes after 3 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Welcome back. Right, so it's time for the clash. Turmoil continues within the Conservative Party as right-wing Tories are reportedly plotting to replace the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, or maybe Conservative Tories are planning to replace him for Penny Mordaunt. That's in a bid to avoid catastrophic losses in the polls. I'm not sure that can be avoided. Should their plot become a success, this could mean a fourth leader. Is it fourth in just 5 years? I feel like it's been 5. I'm joined now by the Director of Climate Media Coalition, Donica McCarthy, and also Reform UK Deputy Leader Ben Habib. Ben Habib, starting with you.
Yeah, so the last chance saloon that the Conservative Party had to save itself was when they deposed Boris Johnson. And they had to get it right at that point, because they had to implement policies that would bring inflation under control, that would promote private enterprise, that would raise wages, that would put more money in people's back pockets, so the cost of living crisis could be controlled. That was the moment. And people trash Liz Truss, but actually she had a vision for definite change and change towards a conservative set of principles. What Rishi did was come in and say, I'm going to fix everything that's broken, but I'm going to do it by changing absolutely nothing about the way the Conservative Party is governed over the last few years. And he did all the same things that they'd done for the last I don't know, whatever number of years they've been in office, which is basically a left-of-centre form of government. State borrowing, state intervention, high taxation, you know, in a big state, as I say, a highly regulated state. For example, he did say that he would get rid of the 4,800 EU regulations on our statute books within 100 days of being made Prime Minister. And he didn't do it. If he'd made that step, if he'd deregulated the economy, taken the pressure off private enterprise and the individuals, we might now be in a very different place. He didn't do it. They are toast. There's nothing. Putting Penny Mordaunt in charge, I agree, is putting an empty vessel in charge. They've had it.
Donald McCarthy.
Yeah, well, where I agree with Ben is it's too late to change. Nothing, whether they change their policies or whether they change the leader, they are going to lose. But the problem that the party has is that majority of British public vote actually supports progressive parties. Something like 2/3 of the public does. Only 33% support the right-wing parties. And what's now happened is the two right-wing parties...
Where did you get that information from?
The latest polling.
What latest polling? Whose latest polling?
The compendium of them. The average Labour polling is around 44%. The average Lib Dem is 11-12%. The average Green is 6%. And the average SNP and Plaid is another 2-3%. But that adds up to around 66%. So what's happened is that the Tories, if they pitch to the right to implement Ben's far right policy.
Hold on a second.
I know. Relax. Relax.
No.
That's what most of us
excuse me, stop.
Far right policies.
Hang on. You said far right policies.
Yes.
I will stop you there. Ben, you can come back for a second because he said you have far right policies.
Well, I'd like to know what policy it is that we hold that is far right.
Okay,
Give me one example.
Which far right policy?
He just said we need to get rid of 4,000 regulations which protect...
Is that far right?
Yes, far right don't want to protect the environment. They want to allow the economy to roar on the back of a destroyed environment. So, for example, Brexit. The Tory party allowed the freedom of Brexit to allow more sewage in our rivers, to allow more pesticides in our cities.
No.
And so those are the regulations that Ben wants to turn up. That's far right.
Well, if you're complaining about sewage and water, that's taken place while those regulations have been in place. There is no shortage of regulations in this country. What we have is a shortage of enforcement, and the water companies are completely broken. They're mini monopolies where chief executives can get away with blue murder. I'm using a Turner phrase, a blue murder, because they're not regulated properly. You can't regulate mini monopolies properly. But I just want to pick you up on one more thing, if I may. You say that the majority of people want progressive liberal policies in this country. That is not right. The polling to which you refer is those people who will vote. The vast majority, the silent majority, are sitting on their hands. The small C Conservatives, who are the biggest majority, in my view, in this country, are sitting on their hands because they've got no one to vote for at the moment. And Reform UK has to get in front of them.
Hold on. I knew this would end up being a party political broadcast. But the point is, though, this is based on people who do vote. And if they don't vote, then they...
But our challenge is to get them out to vote.
So if you want to include non-voters, then that's a different debate. But the other point if you look at the opinion polling, is that, for example, on issues like climate, the vast majority of the British public supports climate action. The vast majority of the public supports action on cheaper public transport. The vast majority of the public supports safer roads. And what's happened in response to pressure from Reform and the mainstream media, billionaire media, is the Tories are taking right. And they're moving policies away from where the public wants. So, for example, Mark Harper today announced a policy you can't drive at 30 miles per hour outside a school, but you can speed at 30 miles per hour all the way from home to the school. So we can kill kids on the way to school, but not outside.
Well, listen, hold on.
Hang on,
stop. Stop. This is
crazy.
He's not saying you can kill kids on the way to school.
I know. I've got to stop you.
30 miles per hour.
This is what we call catastrophizing. He's just saying that outside of school, rather than 20 miles per hour, which actually, if you're driving a petrol or diesel car, would probably mean you're giving off more emissions because you're going more slowly. And so the people within that environment will probably be breathing in more of those fumes. Actually, they should drive slightly more quickly to get them out of that. But if you're near a school, as we know, electric cars and other vehicles are much heavier. I would suggest that 20 miles an hour would be far safer. And nobody would argue with that. But it's unreasonable to expect people to drive 20 miles an hour for a long period of time. It's not on.
Therefore, what's happening here is the policy of 20 miles per hour is supported by a majority of the public.
But how do you say that?
Looking at the polling.
No, well, I don't know what polling you're looking at.
On cycling issues.
No, can I just tell you, Donica,
schools safely.
Be quiet. Can I just tell you, actually, the government are overriding a lot of these LTNs, especially after what happened with Sadiq Khan, these 20 miles an hour, and they're checking that councils aren't just installing them to make money off motorists, which is what is happening. Yes. So that's a reality. Yeah, so for you to say that the majority of people are supporting them is absolute rubbish.
I read the press release, Nana.
I'm glad you did. So did I.
I read the press release about Mark Harper today, produced a policy on LTNs. And do you know what the report says?
Briefly.
If you look at all the areas where the LTNs are put in, London and the other cities, it's a 2-to-1 majority.
Can we get back to the
supports safer roads and LTNs.
Yeah, we all support safer roads, but not LTNs.
But you said you've hit the nail on the head, because all the debate, you say two-thirds majority support climate action, and therefore we must have net zero and economically emasculate ourselves. No. That is not the next step. Just because we all want to preserve the planet doesn't mean we all have to economically emasculate ourselves.
That's right.
And that's where Reform UK comes in.
Hang on, don't go back to the party political broadcast. Stop yourself
it's
right
not
there.
a party political broadcast.
It always ends with.
No, but I've been accused of being far right.
Stop you.
It is not far right to wish to have a prosperous economy.
Listen, hold on. So let's get back to the point of the question, which was, I'm going to ask you yes or no, changing the leader, Penny Mordaunt.
Absolutely, to change the leader would make absolutely no difference, and Penny Mordaunt would be hopeless as a leader.
Insanity. The public would laugh at them.
It's insanity. They should get on with just running the country, for goodness sake, even though they're running it to the ground. Right, so what do you think? GBViews at gbnews.com, or tweet me at GBNews. I'm Nana Akua. We are live on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up at 4, my monologue on electric ambulances. Why are the government so obsessed to push forward with something that is clearly ludicrous? I'll share my thoughts, but next. A fish and chip shop has been ordered to remove a mural with a union flag after locals complained to the council. Stay tuned for the details.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Well, for the week ahead, it's remaining changeable across the board. For most of the week, it will be fairly mild, but towards the end of the week, into the weekend, it does look like it will turn briefly colder. So for the rest of Sunday, still got low pressure generally in charge across the country. But any showers generally fizzling out as the evening goes on. So some fairly clear skies developing across England and Wales, but it doesn't last long in the west. Another band of cloud and rain beginning to work its way in. So by the end of the night, clearest of the skies out towards the east and maybe across Northern Ireland. And for all of us, it is going to be a mild one. Temperatures not falling much lower than 5 to 7 degrees. So into Monday morning, a bright start in the east, but the cloud and rain across central parts will move its way eastwards as the day goes on. Behind it, some drier and brighter weather for a time. This transfers towards the east into the afternoon, and that allows another band of cloud and rain to work its way in from the west. So quite a wet end to the day for Northern Ireland, but for many, another mild day. Temperatures up to 17 degrees in the southeast. Tuesday, for a lot of us, is going to be a rather cloudy picture. Outbreaks of rain moving their way southeastwards. It does brighten up later on in the day across Northern Ireland and Scotland, but on the whole, middle of the week remaining unsettled. But for all of us, temperatures staying on the mild side for the time of year.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews at gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Good afternoon. Welcome to GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. It is The Clash, just coming up to 49 minutes after 3 o'clock. Next up, the Golden Chippy in Greenwich, South London, has been asked to remove its mural depicting the Union flag being held by a humanoid fish. The mural was accompanied by a slogan saying, "A great British meal." Joining me now, GB News national reporter Theo Chukumba. Theo.
Yeah, well, when it comes to popular British foods, Golden Chippy is one of those places which has been called the best chip shop in London. But they've been making the headlines this week because of a mural on the side of their building. If we can just see it, it says "A Great British Meal," and this has split the community here. We understand that there are people who have put in complaints to the local authority, and now there are concerns from people who work here that they might have to take this down. But is it wrong for it to be here? We've been asking the local people here what they think, and this is what they had to say.
I only probably got down because of the flag, didn't they? Like, what's wrong with it? It looks all right, doesn't it? Do you know what I mean? Look at some of the other graffiti they've got around in Greenwich. They don't want to take that down, do they? But when you've got something like this, it's half decent, they want to remove it.
Fantastic artwork. I really like it. Reminds me of Banksy. So if it was a Banksy there, they wouldn't complain. And so why can't other artists who do fantastic work like that also have an opportunity to lighten up the streets joyfully?
Well, the community here is split about this. We've spoken to lots of people today, some in favour, some not quite sure what the issue is here. But we do have this statement from Greenwich Council. A spokesperson has said following a number of complaints made to the local ward councillors, an enforcement case was raised about the mural in question. And they went on to say our planning enforcement team is investigating this as it effectively is unauthorised advert for a chip shop, and that the owner has agreed to paint over it. And they did say this: we will always try to negotiate with the owner before proceeding to a formal planning enforcement notice. But having spoken to the owner today, he said he certainly won't be giving up easily with this issue.
Thank you very much, Theo Chukumba. Right, so what do you think? I'm joined now by the Director of Climate Media Coalition, Donica McCarthy, and Reform UK's Deputy Leader Ben Habib. Donica McCarthy, should they have to paint over this little fish, this humanoid fish? You like animals.
I object on artistic measures. That painting's pretty awful.
It's brilliant.
What I would say is replace with a proper flag. Put a proper British flag outside the shop and paint over it is what I would say. It's gross. But what I would say, actually, is that there's an interesting point. We can't have people painting the walls. Can you imagine if somebody decided to paint the front of Downing Street the colours of the Reform Party? You know, it'd be mad, wouldn't it?
Well, they will soon be painted in the colours of Reform UK.
You gave him his own
I put a British flag and paint over it, what I say.
What do you think?
I think the mural is brilliant. I think it takes imagination. Good for him, marketing his stuff. The best of British. What's wrong with it? I mean, he's probably breached a planning law. He should have probably applied for planning before he painted this thing. But I absolutely love the mural. I see nothing other than upbeat, optimistic, you know, pro-British fish and chips. That's what we are. Promoting the country, promoting his product.
Would you eat those chips?
I would eat those chips every day of the week. In fact, I'm going to go to Greenwich. I'm going to go to Greenwich this week. I'm going to find this shop and I'm going to have fish and chips.
I feel like
I won't eat the chips because I'm a vegetarian.
Well, I just feel like eating fish and chips now.
I know. Doesn't it look brilliant? But you like it, don't you?
I love it.
Yeah.
Fish and chips, mushy peas. Just cannot beat it.
I love mushy peas.
Oh, so good, so good. Well, listen, lots of you have been getting in touch with your thoughts on some of the topics we've been discussing. David says, we talked about leadership of the Tory party, and David says that Penny looks the part, but alas, is far from what is the right person to lead the party on our behalf. The only true representative we could rely on to carry out our wishes is Suella Braverman, who doesn't need anyone to pull any control strings. I think Suella Braverman has seen that she'll be holding the reins of a sinking ship and she doesn't fancy doing it. Annette says, remember how Penny held the dagger, the sword? She did a good job. She'll be good at the front of the ship.
Yeah, great. Yeah. Can hold a sword.
The wheel as it goes down. Annette says, can I repeat, please, 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 not Penny Mordaunt. She would only guarantee a disaster for the Tories at the election. Please get this out there, guys. I've got it out there for you, Annette, so hopefully you're happy with that. Dottie says, if they want to replace Sunak, anyone but Mordaunt, pal of Bill Gates, as woke as heel, will this Tory party ever get anything right? Dottie, ex-Tory, new reform voter. That's what she said. Penda babe. David says Penny Mordaunt is a woke politician in blue clothing. Unbelievable stupidity. Sorry, Penny, if you're listening, but that's not my thoughts, that's theirs. And Teresa on the transit, she said, so a man who is in his 40s, worked in a bank, got the knowledge to work there. Now a woman could become a CEO, whereas a real woman wouldn't stand a chance because not allowed up the ladder. Well, thank you for that. Keep all your thoughts coming. GBViews@gbnews.com or tweet me at GBNews. I'm Nana Akua. Still to come, my monologue. And then for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is it time for the Tories to focus on policy, not personality? My monologue on electric ambulances on the way. I'll be joined by Christine Hamilton and Danny Kelly, but I'll leave you with the weather.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Metaverse. Well, for the week ahead, it's remaining changeable across the board. For most of the week, it will be fairly mild, but towards the end of the week into the weekend, it does look like it will turn briefly colder. So for the rest of Sunday, still got low pressure generally in charge across the country. But any showers generally fizzling out as the evening goes on. So some fairly clear skies developing across England and Wales, but it doesn't last long in the west. Another band of cloud and rain beginning to work its way in. So by the end of the night, clearest of the skies out towards the east and maybe across Northern Ireland. And for all of us, it is going to be a mild one. Temperatures not falling much lower than 5 to 7 degrees. So into Monday morning, a bright start in the east, but the cloud and rain across central parts will move its way eastwards as the day goes on. Behind it, some drier and brighter weather for a time. This transfers towards the east into the afternoon, and that allows another band of cloud and rain to work its way in from the west. So quite a wet end to the day for Northern Ireland, but for many, another mild day, temperatures up to 17 degrees in the southeast. Tuesday, for a lot of us, is going to be a rather cloudy picture. Outbreaks of rain moving their way south-eastwards. It does brighten up later on in the day across Northern Ireland and Scotland, but on the whole, middle of the week remaining unsettled. But for all of us, temperatures staying on the mild side for the time of year.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Want to be a winner?
You've won £18,000.
I'm flipping heck. I don't know what to say. Enter our massive spring giveaway with 3 big seasonal prizes to be won. There's £12,345 in tax-free cash to give your finances a spring boost. We'll also send you on a shopping spree with £500 worth of vouchers to spend in the store of your choice. You'll also get a garden gadget package. For another chance to win the vouchers, the treats and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 29th of March. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Good afternoon. It is just coming up to 4 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. And for the next few hours, me and my panel, we're taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today, it's author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton and also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. Before we get started, let's get your latest news headlines.
Very good afternoon to you. It's 4 o'clock. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. The Transport Secretary Mark Harper says Rishi Sunak will lead the Tories into the next election. Senior figures in the Conservative Party have been attempting to downplay claims of a plot to replace the Prime Minister with Penny Mordaunt. The move, though, would mean a fourth leader of the party in just 5 years. Mr Harper says, unlike Labour, the Conservatives have a plan on delivering for the country.
We've got to show them, by the time of the election, two things. We've got to show them that we've got a plan, the plan is working and it's delivering for them. And I think we can see that it is on inflation and on taxes. We've also then got to show them that the Labour Party doesn't have a plan and will be a big risk. You know, for example, we know the Labour Party wants to spend £28 billion on their green plan. They've hidden the price tag now, but they don't know how to pay for it. That would mean taxes going up.
Meanwhile, Shadow Paymaster General Jonathan Ashworth told GB News the government's priorities are all wrong.
Rishi Sunak is not acting in the national interest. It's reckless, it's irresponsible. He should name the day of a general election and stabilise matters. At the moment, he's more preoccupied with his own leadership and saving his own skin than governing in the national interest. And I think after 14 years, this is a pretty discredited government. He needs to name the date. I mean, but if he doesn't name the date soon, we could have a leadership election soon.
Speaking at the Liberal Democrats Spring Conference, leader Sir Ed Davey accused the Prime Minister of giving up.
Who knows? Maybe, despite what he says, Rishi will call the election tomorrow or next week. I certainly hope so. The country can't wait a moment longer to see the back of this terrible government.
At least 74 people have been arrested for taking part in anti-Vladimir Putin protests in Russia ahead of his expected landslide election victory. The demonstrations have been supported by Yulia Navalnaya, widow of the Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny. She held a similar one outside the Russian embassy in Berlin. Well, thousands of people in Russia heeded calls to form long queues outside polling stations in what's been called a noon against Putin protest. He is almost certain to extend his 24 years in power in an election that has been described as a foregone conclusion. Work on the M25 in Surrey is on schedule to reopen for Monday rush hour. National Highways says good progress is being made after the unprecedented closure. Motorists reported miles of tailbacks yesterday on the approach to the 5-mile closure between junctions 10 and 11 in Surrey. Councils will have to consider whether residents support low-traffic neighbourhoods in their area before going ahead with the schemes. The draft guidance is due to come into force this summer. They're designed to encourage cycling and walking by limiting driving along side roads, and they include wider pavements and barriers to restrict vehicles. LTNs often use signs and bollards to prevent traffic being able to drive along certain routes, as well as local residents. Businesses and emergency services, though, will also need to approve the moves. Steve Harley, best known as the front man of the British rock band Cockney Rebel, has died at the age of 73. Come up and see me to make me smile. Well, the band enjoyed success with their biggest hit, the #1 hit, Make Me Smile, back in 1975. Steve Harley had been touring up until recently, but cancelled dates to have treatment for cancer. His daughter Greta says he died peacefully with his family by his side. You can get more on our stories through the GB News alerts. Scan the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. That's it. Now back to Nana.
Good afternoon. It's fast approaching 5 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Excuse me. Now, I talked about this yesterday, but I seriously couldn't get my head around it. Electric ambulances. The government are planning to spend our money, over £500 million, on a fleet of electric net zero ambulances. Even being told this alarm bell should be ringing, most of the people I know who have an EV have got rid of it because of range anxiety and the inconvenience having simply just got too much for them. Frankly, they never do as much as they say they will anyway. Why are the governments so obsessed to push forward with something that is clearly ludicrous? First of all, they are totally impractical. The ambulances will take some 4 hours to charge each, so it will be out of action for that time. They will need space and individual chargers and heaven forbid, they need to do more than the 70 to 80 miles capability, which will be somewhat diminished depending on weather conditions and presumably the use of life-saving equipment to keep their patients alive, which I'm guessing will be powered by the same battery. Their top speed is just 56 miles an hour. What if there's a major incident? It would be outrageous if people died because the ambulance had run out of juice. Apparently, the NHS is committed to making all new emergency ambulances electric by 2030 and the entire fleet by 2045. In England alone, this would cost over £600 million. And in any case, EVs are not even really zero emissions. Only last month, the Advertising Standards Authority, the ASA, said that EV environmental claims must be clear and that adverts must make it clear that zero emissions only applies whilst they are being driven. Otherwise, it is likely to mislead. And that is because while electric cars don't produce any emissions from the tailpipe, there are emissions involved in the manufacture, as well as the production of the electricity used to charge them. So anyone driving an EV thinking what a great job they're doing for the planet needs to think again. And even if you buy into the notion that they are good for the environment, ambulances are usually changed every 5 years. And at about £150,000 per vehicle, the new EV version would need to be on the road for over 15 to make it commercially viable. I don't know any EV that can last that long. So why should the public pay for this? In my view, it's commercially irresponsible and putting our lives at risk for the sake of an ever-questioning green agenda, which will bankrupt the country and is not in the best interest of the patients. So before we get stuck into the debates, here's what's coming up today. For the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is it time for the Tories to focus on policy rather than personality? The Tories find themselves in yet another leadership row after rumours emerged of a plot within the party to oust Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and crown Penny Mordaunt as leader. Then at 4:50, it's Worldview. We'll cross live to Tel Aviv and have a chat with Uri Geller to discuss Liberal Democrat MP Layla Moran's comments that Benjamin Netanyahu deserves to be thrown in jail for his actions in Gaza. Plus, we'll also cross live to Los Angeles to speak to Paul Dudridge, host of the Politics People podcast, to get the latest news that Nigel Farage could be returning to politics as an envoy for Donald Trump to Britain. At 5, it's this week's Outside. Today, my mystery guest, is a British singer-songwriter who featured on the tracks Turn Around, Feel Good and Tonight. Can you guess who he is? All will be revealed in the next hour. That's coming up. Tell me what you think on everything we're discussing. Email gbviews@gbnews.com or tweet me at gbnews. Right, let's get started. Let's welcome again to my panel author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton and broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. Right, Danny Kelly, I've got to start this with you because seeing as you have your own car garage and you sell
used cars.
He's the expert.
Used car business. You're going to ask me whether it's a good idea, the NHS deploying Alecki ambulances. I think it's a rubbish idea. I couldn't think of a more poo idea. These things have a range of 70 miles. So if you're called out, it's all right in London. So you get hit by a car in central London, an ambulance will be there, blues and twos, and the mileage is very short. So you're not even going to get up to 56 miles an hour in this gridlocked hellhole of a city. You'll get back to you'll get back to a London hospital, you'll be bandaged up and the ambulance will go out again. But if you go to Warwickshire, if you go to Yorkshire, or if you go to the northeast, you go to the beautiful county of Durham, where there are isolated villages 30, 40, 50 miles away from any hospitals. So you get hit by a car in a village in Yorkshire, 35 miles away from a city centre Leeds hospital. The ambulance, it might not be fully charged. It gets to your house and it runs out of juice on the way back. It actually runs out of battery power. So it's going to cost lives. I mentioned this on your fabulous Saturday show yesterday, Nana. There are 3 exceptions, in my opinion. There's this madness about electric vehicles. The police, because that's the next ticking time bomb. Police won't be able to get to emergencies whenever they're all electric vehicles. Or the people who are doing the crimes will get battery powered, some other different powered car. Yeah, the police will not. This is going to affect the police, this madness. And the ambulance service and also the fire service. There should be exclusions. They should be able to use diesel and petrol-powered engines.
Well, the number of jobs as well. So you say that in London it will be fine, but what it will do is minimise the cumulative number of jobs you can do. So you'll do one job, but then you might have to then charge again because so that's another 4 hours. So it's a stupid idea.
It is.
Christine Hamilton.
Well, I mean, anybody visiting here from Mars, for example, would think we had taken leave of our senses. I mean, not only all the things Danny has said, but you're going to have even more ambulances. You're going to have even more ambulances because you'll have to have a whole load sitting there on charge. It is utter madness. But let's go back even one further. We don't need to do this. This country is leading the world in cutting emissions. We've cut ours by something like 40%. We don't need to do this. We are responsible for less than 1%, something of a percent of these emissions. We do not need to do it. Meanwhile, China is burning all these coal-fired fire stations and building 250 of them around the world. It is madness that we're putting the lives of our people at risk for an infinitesimal improvement on something that we've already improved beyond belief.
But you know that's a slight false argument of 1% because you know that the emissions are only offset because we get other countries to do a lot of our dirty work. So after manufacturing, we've lost our manufacturing base pretty much. So a lot of it goes from China, so that they are selling us stuff.
Yes, but Nana, that enables people in this country to take the moral high ground.
Well, that's right.
Exactly, and it enables all these wokey people and all the people who worship on the shrine of not zero, as I call it, it enables them to feel good because we're not producing things. Of course, you're 100% right. China is.
Some people might argue about the emissions as well. So, OK, to make the vehicle, as I pointed out, the emissions is not zero, and the ASA said that you can't say it's zero emissions because actually you are getting the electricity from fossil fuels and you're making the vehicle and you're using fossil fuels. So there's not... But at the point of source, so Sadiq Khan would argue that it's great because in East London, the air quality is better.
All these people driving around smugly in their little EVs,
Also,
you know.
with the Alecki ambulances as well, don't forget that if someone, God forbid, has a cardiac arrest or something, the ambulance could be potentially parked outside the patient's house with the, I was going to say the engine running because it's keeping the lights going, it's keeping the electrical equipment going because everything has to go through an alternator to charge the battery, to keep the life support machines going. And all of this, you're not necessarily just going to be shipped off to the hospital in an ambulance. You could be there for 35, 40 minutes, an hour, whilst you're being worked on and whilst you're waiting for a doctor to come in another electric car. And then all of a sudden, the range is reduced dramatically. It's just not practical. It might be practical in big urban areas, but even in Birmingham, for example, if there's a crash on the M6, the arterial route of the UK, you have ambulances leaving Birmingham city centre, racing up the M6. They have to continue up the M6 in order to go back down the M6 because they've got to get up to the next junction. If they're waiting for the fire service to cut some poor individual out of a car, they're waiting for that individual to be extricated from the car. It's just a rubbish idea.
And some people would argue again that they are cheaper to maintain. There's less parts that will go wrong. Although when something does go wrong, you probably have to replace the whole thing. But you know, they are. There's no, as we said earlier.
Okay, but may I just address that? If some people argue that electric vehicles are more reliable, then those people are ignorant. If you look at the reliability aspect of an electric car compared to a diesel or a petrol, they are far less reliable.
And this is from you as a.
I know this for a fact. There've been stories on this.
Christine,
they're ignorant.
Well, we're far too early to be doing this. We're still in the foothills of electric car production, etc. And for services, as Danny says, ambulances, fire, police, to be trial. This is a trial. Let's be devil's advocate. This is apparently just a trial. But to trial something like this on essential services is madness, absolute madness. But it makes people feel good.
I mean, look, there is a place for EVs if you've got a nice drive, if you've got like somewhere to charge it up, and you've got space and time, and you don't really have to go very far.
Run the kids to school.
And it's just a little thing. Although I'm concerned they're very heavy, so if they do bump into someone, they better be going really slowly, otherwise you're toast. And also, you're actually going to spend more money buying tyres because they burn rubber. They burn the tyres really quickly. So there are. And also, don't park it in one of those car parks, with the cement, because some of them have collapsed because of them. And also, let's just remind you,
spontaneously combust.
I was just about to mention the spontaneous combustion. I actually started off trying to find positive things.
It's impossible.
Down a hole.
Nana, you've been as balanced and objective as you can as a journalist, but it's impossible to find any lunatic to say it's a good idea.
Hang on, essential services.
For
essential services.
Danny has thrown down the gauntlet. If there are any lunatics out there watching who think they can defend this, please.
Yeah.
Come on the blower and let's hear.
Yeah, let us know.
Danny will apologise for calling you a lunatic.
I won't, because it's impossible. They should be shipped off in a diesel ambulance to the mental home if they think that it's as good as an idea as a petrol or a diesel.
All right, listen, if you just joined us, welcome. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. It's fast approaching 17 minutes after 4 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. Coming up, World View. We'll cross live to Los Angeles to speak to the host of the Politics People podcast and also to Tel Aviv to get up an update with Uri Geller on what's going on in Israel. But next, it's time for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, is it time for the Tories to focus on policy rather than personality? I've got a poll up right now on X asking you that very question. Is it time for the Tories to focus on policy over personality? Send me your thoughts. Email gbviews@gbnews.com or tweet me at GBNews. Cast your vote now.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Now, I'm sure you have seen this video that went viral this week, and if you haven't, well, I think you're going to enjoy it. This is a firefighter leaning on a fence whilst watching a trapped driving instructor's car sink. in 4 feet of floodwater. Looks very comfortable there, doesn't he? Just leaning against the
Just
fence.
chilling, just relaxing. Yeah, there were in fact 2 Essex fire and rescue crews, an ambulance and a police car parked near the sinking vehicle, but they wouldn't enter the water because they had to wait for specialist crews who were trained for the water depth.
Well, 2 people who weren't going to sit back and watch were these 2, Jack and Danielle Price, who took it upon themselves to rescue the submerged driver. And Danielle joins us now. Very good morning to you, Danielle, and you are a hero, an absolute hero. What happened in this video? Make sense of it for us.
So we were filming in the area for our YouTube channel, and we've seen the fire brigade come through. I was actually out at 5 o'clock in the morning with my husband, Jamie. We know it always happens there, as you can see, and it was clear. We've seen the fire brigade come through, we've followed them, and they're just standing around as if nothing's happened. In the clip, it says he's fine, he's on his phone, and then sort of walked away. But what they failed to realise is when my partner actually opened the door, as you can hear, he's on the phone to the emergency crew in panic, thinking he's going to sink. So we could not just sit there and watch. He's absolutely terrified.
Yeah, poor bloke. Well done you. Do you reckon this is health and safety gone mad?
It is, because although I do sympathise with them, they are so red-taped, but surely sort of common sense has to kick in as open the door.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. If you just tuned in, where you been? I'm Nana Akua. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. It's just coming up to 21 minutes after 4 o'clock. Let's have a quick look at what you've been saying. We're talking about electric ambulances. Ian says electric ambulances are a ridiculous idea. They would need charging. So instead of having ambulance work because 3 shifts during a 24-hour period, it would only work 2 with the third being used for charging. Yeah, it's ridiculous, isn't it? A much better option would be to be net zero, would be to use hydrogen power. Yeah, we all think that, but they're not going to do that, are they? Ralph says police especially would have to buy a second set of vehicles because even if the last shift they would need to be charged, which takes time. Cars are used almost constantly with shifts using the vehicles which have just come off duty. And finally, Tim says we got an EV 6 months ago, but have just got rid of it after 3.5-hour journeys from Wales, which took 8.5 hours because we needed to charge it twice for 160 miles. We had to wait nearly 3 hours at a motorway service station for a charger at a cost of £25 a time. So both ways, the outward journey took 5.5 hours, cost us £100. So much for green policies. Exactly. Thank you for that. If anyone's got something good to say about these ambulances, we'd love to hear it if they're electric. But now it's time for the Great British Debate This Out, and I'm asking, is it time for the Tories to focus on policy, not personality? Tory backbench MPs are rumoured to be plotting to replace the Prime Minister again. Commons leader with Penny Mordaunt ahead of the election. Senior Tories have attempted to downplay these rumours, with Transport Secretary Mark Harper saying that the party needs to show people that Tories have a plan and can deliver it. How about delivering the plan that you're currently on at the moment? This means Tory leadership is yet again in question after we already had 4 leaders in the last 5 years. So for the Great British Debate This Out, I'm asking, is it time for the Tories to focus on policy, not personality? Joining me to discuss, former advisor to David Cameron, Philip Blond, Norman Baker, former Liberal Democrat Minister, Ben Habib, Deputy Leader of Reform UK, and Donica McCarthy, Director for Climate Media Coalition. Right, I'm going to start with you, David, Philip Blond.
Yeah,
Trouble is, politics and personality merge. You've got to have the ideas and then convince people of it. But it's true to say the Conservatives have had the wrong policy mix, arguably since 2010. I've long argued that the move ahead was becoming pro-worker, speaking to the rampant economic and cultural insecurity for those in the bottom half of the income distribution. And they've failed to do that. They've stuck with 1980s liberalism for the home counties, and it's failed them and it's failed the country completely. And I, for one, think there's merit in changing leader, as extreme as that sounds. But the trouble is, Mordaunt doesn't recognise a break. It doesn't represent a break with what's gone on, but a continuance. We actually need a leader who will speak to the 2019 electorate. Boris Johnson had lots of ideas, but was incapable of enacting them or bringing them to fruition. And we need somebody who has the personality and the charisma to paint the big picture of what could be achieved if we had those policies in place. And I'm afraid that's what's needed.
Well, but you had that. You had Boris Johnson, and he looked like a leader. He walked and talked like a leader, but he had people who could help him do the other bit. But the British public liked him. Norman Baker.
Well, Nana, your question simply is it always better for governments to concentrate on policies rather than personalities? Because ultimately, policies affect members of the public, and personalities, by and large, don't. But, you know, what we're seeing again is yet more infighting, yet more psychodrama from the Tory party, which I think the public at large are fed up with. And the Tories are in this bind because they don't particularly rate Rishi Sunak, and the public don't rate him. His ratings and opinion polling is really bad. But on the other hand, to change the Prime Minister yet again would look completely ludicrous. So what's going on at the moment is a battle within the Tory party, not for the election, they've written that off, but for where the Tory party will be after the election. And to that extent, personalities matter, because, say, Jeremy Hunt, if he keeps his seat, by the way, Jeremy Hunt will be very different to Kemi Badenoch. So you're right, the personalities and policies are inexorably linked, I'm afraid.
Ben Habib.
Well, I agree completely with Philip that the Conservative Party has had all the wrong policies since 2010. And as I said earlier in this programme, the opportunity Rishi Sunak had was when he took over as leader of the party. That was the time that he absolutely had to make the change in policies that would deliver for the vast majority of this country and save it from the economic Armageddon path on which it is headed. And he didn't do it. What he said was he was going to fix the economy by practicing all the same policies that got it into the mess in the first place. What they don't realise is taxes have to come down on the working and middle classes. Taxes have to come down on businesses. We need to deregulate desperately. This inexorable drive to net zero is economically emasculating the United Kingdom, and all of this needs a 180-degree turn. The government just hasn't, this Conservative Parliamentary Party and its government hasn't got the vision to do it. They can change leaders as much as they like. Ultimately, they will not be able to change policies because they don't believe in the right policies.
Donald McCarthy.
Well, I think it would be a real waste and an insult to the British people to have yet another Tory party leadership campaign. They need to have a general election and then post-general election, once they've lost power, to go off and have a proper leadership election and have a proper debate. One of the problems the Tory party has is that their original source of power, which was the Tory press, no longer backs them. The Tory press is now backing reform, and so the Tory leadership has a real problem. Do we go towards the reform policies, or do we go towards the policies that most of the public in Britain wants, which is lower taxes for poor people, higher taxes for the rich, and to look after our environment and to look after climate change?
It's embarrassing, I think, frankly, that they are doing this. See, now, I would admit to being a Conservative voter the previous time. Before that, I think I voted Labour, so, you know, I will go wherever the policies suit. But I want to hear some policies. I want to see some action. Do you not think that if they perhaps focused on doing something, they'd stand a better chance, Philip, than spending their time, even though policy and personality are intrinsically linked, if they actually started to do something properly, that the British public might even consider giving them some more ground?
Well, look, it's certainly true that Starmer hasn't won the hearts of the British people. It's certainly true that the Labour lead is challengeable, because the hold on British people is is tenuous. They've followed a small target strategy. They've let the Conservatives commit error. And so this is where I think actually a new leader with a coherent, broad, idealistic and transformative vision, which after all is what Boris offered but was unable to deliver, would make a real difference for the Conservatives. It's about the scale of the defeat. Do they go below 100 seats? Are they 3 elections away from challenging again? Or do they go to a position from which they can recover? And in the not unlikely event that Labour also fail, because Labour are representing also a continuation of the failed past, then come again. And so I think the agenda, the argument for a new leader and a new vision is actually quite compelling, much as it would cause consternation and humour. It would offer us a real choice, which we currently don't have.
But what about us? Like the general public? Norman, they are, again, politically posturing, saying, oh, we'll put this person in front of a sinking ship. What about the policies? We're all sitting here, we need... The NHS is crumbling, everything is crumbling, and this is what the best they can do, even in their last bit. It's like you're leaving a job, you still have to do the job.
Well, sinking ship is right. And the problem is that it doesn't matter who the leader is, but the Tory party at the moment is ungovernable. Yeah. That's the bottom line. There's no party which is in the worse state than the Tories. No leader can emerge from the Tory party in Parliament who can bring everybody together. I mean, you cannot bring together people who are basically reform UK people, along with old-fashioned, Cameronites. There's nothing in common with those people. So there's no unifying agenda they can produce. And Donaghy's right. That what has to happen is you have to lose the election, and then actually lick their wounds and decide where they want to go, which is what Labour did after 2010.
Well, I mean, Donaghy, he says you're right. You're both sort of liberals,
well, I think what we're both saying is what you're saying.
I think most
right.
of us are saying the same thing.
I think we're agreeing with you, Nana. What we're actually saying is the British public should not have to go through the Tory party deciding in private, yet again, who our Prime Minister is. It's time we had a say in who the Prime Minister is. I'm tired of a small group of men and a couple of women in Parliament, in the Tory party, deciding who the next Prime Minister is. It's time we had a vote and let the people decide.
Well, we decided that and they didn't like it. And final word to you then, Ben Habib.
Well, we all know precisely which policies the Conservatives would have to adopt in order to win the next election. They could do it tomorrow. But the parliamentary party, as Norman said, is ungovernable and wouldn't support those policies. So they are toast.
They're toast. All right, well, listen, so I'm going to ask you a straight question then. Should they be changing leader before the election, yes or no? Ben Habib?
No.
Donaghy McCarthy?
Definitely not.
Philip Blond?
Yes.
And Norman Baker?
No.
No. All right. Well, it's just a different person holding the reins of the ship as it goes down, isn't it? Thank you so much for your thoughts. Really good to talk to you. That, of course, was Philip Blond, Norman Baker, Ben Habib, and also Donaghy McCarthy. Right, so what do you think? GBNews at gbnews.com. I'm Nana Akua. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up, we will continue with the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, is it time for the Tories to focus on policy, not personality? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel broadcasters Christine Hamilton and Danny Kelly. Still to come, my outside guest, I'll be joined by a singer and songwriter who's also appeared on Celebrity Wife Swap and Celebrity Big Brother. Who is he? But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
It's 4:31. Good afternoon to you from the GB Newsroom. I'm Aaron Armstrong. At least 74 people have been arrested in Russia on the final day of an election Vladimir Putin is guaranteed to win. Thousands of people staged a symbolic Noon Against Putin protest, forming long queues at polling stations across the country in an apparent show of dissent. The demonstrations have been supported by Yulia Navalnaya, widow of the Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny. She held one outside the Russian embassy in Berlin, and there was a similar demonstration outside Russia's embassy in London. Putin has no credible election rivals. Any serious opposition figures are in exile, in prison, or are dead. Rishi Sunak will lead the Tories into the next election, according to the Transport Secretary Mark Harper. Senior Tories have been attempting to downplay claims of a Conservative plot to replace the Prime Minister with Penny Mordaunt. The move, though, would mean a fourth leader of the party in just 5 years. Work on the M25 in Surrey is on schedule to reopen for Monday rush hour. And National Highways says good progress has been made following unprecedented closures this weekend. Motorists have reported long tailbacks on the approach to the 5-mile closures between junctions 10 and 11 in Surrey. It'll open at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. And Steve Harley, the frontman of the British rock band Cockney Rebel, has died at the age of 73. Well, that was their big hit, the #1 hit, Make Me Smile, in 1975. Steve Harley had continued to tour up until recently, but did cancel some dates to have treatment for cancer. His daughter Greta says he died peacefully with his family by his side. Well, you get more on our latest stories. Sign up to GB News Alerts, scan the QR code on your screen, or go to the website gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's back to Nana.
Thank you, Aaron. Coming up, it's Worldview time. We'll cross over to Los Angeles to speak to Paul Dudridge, and then over to Tel Aviv to get the latest from what's going on around the world with Uri Geller. But next, it's time for the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, is it time for the Tories to focus on policy, not personality? I've got a poll up right now on X asking you that very question. Is it time for the Tories to focus on policy, not personality? Send me your thoughts. Email gbviews@gbnews.com or tweet me at GBNews.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. Every night from 11 p.m.
Is a debate on gender really a far-right issue?
Far right. I'm so bored of that phrase, you know what I mean? Like, anyone who talks about... anyone who acknowledges that there are two sexes is suddenly far right, because that's what Hitler and Mussolini were all about. This question from Shirley is, of course, about Labour. They've been accused of being undemocratic because they pressured a pub into cancelling a debate, and this debate features Kelly J. Keane, who's been on this show a couple of times, and she's a campaigner, and she was just on the panel, and then they got a letter saying that they couldn't do it because Kelly J. Keane apparently attracts far-right groups. Now, they've tried this trick before, but because some awful, ghastly neo-Nazi types turned up near to an event that she was holding in Australia, they kind of tried to blame that on her and suggest that the two were the same thing. They weren't. That was an opportunistic group turning up to... they're not... neo-Nazis aren't pro-feminist. They're not pro an event called Let Women Speak. That's just ridiculous.
New Zealand's TV blurred her touching her zip because they said that her touching her zip was a far-right dog whistle because she's making that symbol.
Yeah, but she wasn't making the symbol, she was just adjusting a zip.
Yeah, and also, this isn't a far-right symbol.
I mean, that was incredible because she obviously wasn't making that symbol anyway. She was just adjusting a top. But this New Zealand news channel blurred out the hand so that they could pretend that it was some horrible ghastly...
Yeah.
I mean, this is stuff, isn't it?
She's talked about having voted Labour in the past. She's so not far right.
But also, even if she were right-wing, which she isn't, why would they be banning a panel where there's a discussion about one of the most important issues of our day? What are Labour playing at here?
They're anti-democratic, aren't they? They're just kind of playing whack-a-mole with things they don't like. I think maybe I'll write to the pub and say I do want to see Kelly J. Keane there.
Yeah, but they won't listen to you
well,
if
no,
you say
they
that,
won't,
will they?
won't.
Because you've got the unfashionable opinion, Chris.
Well, I'm the unfashionable workplace.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From 10 a.m. every Saturday, we want to make you think and we want to make you laugh.
So we will give you all the top stories.
Now we start with a story that has shocked the nation this week.
But we're also going to make it light and fun and bring some entertainment in to make your Saturday morning nice and restful.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Just coming up to 37 minutes after 4 o'clock. If you've just tuned in, welcome on board. Nana Nicey. You're with me, I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. And it's time for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, is it time for the Tories to focus on policy, not personality? Now, they've found themselves amongst leadership worries again, as a rumour is spreading that some MPs are considering replacing Rishi Sunak with Commons leader Penny Mordaunt before the election this year. Transport Secretary Mark Harper has insisted that Mr Sunak will remain Prime Minister through the election, as senior Tories seek to downplay reports of backbench plotting. And Ms Mordaunt ran for party leadership in October 2022, but a close source to her has dismissed the claim as nonsense. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is it time for the Tories to focus on policy, not personality? Joining me now, my panel, broadcaster and author Christine Hamilton, and also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. Christine Hamilton.
Absolutely. I mean, they should have been focusing on policy all along. The trouble is, we've got a Prime Minister who is a born conformist. You know, he was teacher's pet, he was head boy, he was this, that, and he likes to please everybody. You know, so he said that he would vote for leave just because he thought that was the right thing to do. He's done nothing about getting Brexit. They've lied to us on immigration, lied on this, that and the other. They do not deserve to be re-elected. They are heading for catastrophic defeat. Nothing can save them. I do not want a Labour government at all. I can tell you it is the last thing in the world I want, but the Tories just simply don't deserve to be re-elected. It's too late.
Danny Kelly.
Too late.
What a depressing outlook on
I know,
politics.
well, I am depressed by it, because the thought of a Labour government is horrendous.
Policy or personality? Listen, I think that you can have both. I just don't think Rishi Sunak is the man that crosses the bridge of politics, policies and personality. The last one we had, of course, was Boris Johnson, and people voted for Boris Johnson because of his personality. No, he was a salesman, and you need to be a salesman. Look, it's great. You can have the most boring politician who can do the most fantastic work, enact the most fantastic policies. But as far as being electable, you need an element of personality.
You do.
Rishi Sunak doesn't have that.
Well, neither does Keir Starmer, though, if we're totally honest.
I mean, Maggie had it, Blair had it.
Yeah.
And then you have to go to, well, who?
Well,
Boris Johnson.
Boris, of course. Boris
Johnson.
But what about, that's it.
But Keir Starmer...
No, he doesn't. But we're at... Politically, there's almost a war at the moment, and it's tribal, and people are taking either side, and people will take the side of someone who's dull, like Keir Starmer, if he's going to be the victor of the nasty Tories.
He's jazzed himself up by now, suddenly starting to wear glasses.
Really?
That's his secret weapon.
Well, listen, this show's nothing without you and your views. Let's welcome our Great British Voices, their opportunity to be on the show and tell us what they think about the topics we're discussing. Where should we go? Should we go to Kidderminster?
The home of carpets.
I wonder if there's a... I don't think I've got a map, but let's go to John Reid.
West Midlands.
John Reid, oh, yeah. John Reid. So what do you think? Policy or personality? Is it about time they start focusing in the dying embers of the party on at least some policy?
Be good if the Tories focused on something, Nana, wouldn't it? I mean, you know, I've not voted for Tories since Maggie was around, and that was only because I was a homeowner at the time and still am. I think people do tend to vote on policy or personality more than policy. Although I can see the Tories have got policies at the moment, I don't actually think they've got anything of any merit particularly. So, yeah, I think the personality is more likely. I don't really know Keir Starmer well enough. I know his image, and maybe he hasn't got much of a personality, but they've certainly got policies. Not everybody would agree with them. But do we ever agree with everybody? I think you don't agree with everything, do you? Just wait and see what comes along. So, yeah, I think they're a dead duck, really. If I was sitting in Rishi Sunak's shoes today, I think I'd probably throw in the towel, have a week's holiday, and, you know, get one of my mates to send a helicopter for me or something. You know, one of those sort of have an away day up in Leeds or somewhere. Meet one or two fuckers that I've been with, and you know, come back and announce the election and say, well, thanks very much, boys. I've had a good time. Ta-da for now.
Yeah, exactly. I'll go back to America. I think he's got a green card from there. Listen, thank you so much, John Reid. He's there in Kidderminster. Thank you. He's our Great British Voice. Today, I've been asking, is it time for Tories to focus on policy and not personality? Lots of you have been getting in touch with your views. Keep them coming. gbviews@gbnews.com or tweet me at GBNews. Right, so coming up, it's a World View. We'll be going over live to speak to Paul Duddridge, host of the Politics People podcast, and Uri Geller. Stay tuned.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Well, for the week ahead, it's remaining changeable across the board. For most of the week, it will be fairly mild, but towards the end of the week into the weekend, it does look like it will turn briefly colder. So for the rest of Sunday, still got low pressure generally in charge across the country. But any showers generally fizzling out as the evening goes on. So some fairly clear skies developing across England and Wales, but it doesn't last long in the west. Another band of cloud and rain beginning to work its way in. So by the end of the night, clearest of the skies out towards the east and maybe across Northern Ireland. And for all of us, it is going to be a mild one. Temperatures not falling much lower than 5 to 7 degrees. So into Monday morning, a bright start in the east, but the cloud and rain across central parts will move its way eastwards as the day goes on. Behind it, some drier and brighter weather for a time. This transfers towards the east into the afternoon, and that allows another band of cloud and rain to work its way in from the west. So quite a wet end to the day for Northern Ireland, but for many, another mild day, temperatures up to 17 degrees in the southeast. Tuesday, for a lot of us, is going to be a rather cloudy picture. Outbreaks of rain moving their way south-eastwards. It does brighten up later on in the day across Northern Ireland and Scotland, but on the whole, middle of the week remaining unsettled. But for all of us, temperatures staying on the mild side for the time of year.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
Good afternoon, you're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. Now, in the next hour, I'll be joined by my outside guest. I'll give you some clues. He's a British singer-songwriter who became the singer of Fats and Smalls and who also appeared on Celebrity Wife Swap and Celebrity Big Brother. Have you guessed who this might be? But first, let's head over to Tel Aviv. It's time for World View, as Liberal Democrat MP Leila Moran has said that Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu should be thrown in jail for his actions in Gaza. Ms Moran, the first and only MP of Palestinian heritage, spoke at her party conference and called Hamas barbaric, but said that they were not the only extremists and that the assault by Israel on Gaza has gone beyond the pale. Well, let's head over live to Tel Aviv and speak to Uri Geller, Mystifier, and let's see what he has to say about that. Uri, welcome.
So, let me calm down because I'm really angry and shaking. Look, Nana, who is Leila Moran? No one in Israel has ever heard of this person, and I bet no one in the UK has ever heard of her either. She's a nobody, but she's now gone and made a name for herself, and for all the wrong reasons. Leila Moran has disgraced the Liberal Democratic Party, and Ed Davey, who is the leader of the party, should kick her out. Her words are deplorable. This person is drawing a comparison between Israel and Hamas, and this is the spokesperson for foreign affairs? Come on. Leila Moran clearly does not know the first thing about Israel and the Palestinians. You know what? You know what she should do? She should leave the Liberal Democratic Party and join Hamas, because it looks like she would be more at home there. Wait, now I'm finished. She's an embarrassment to the British politics.
She did point out that Hamas, didn't she say that Hamas are terrorists? So she's not said that they're good people at all, has she? And she's identified that they're not great. But you do make a good point that she's not really in touch with exactly what's happening. She's not on the ground like you are.
Well, let me tell you that no wonder the Liberal Democrats continually lose elections if they appoint people like her. Now, Nana, do you see what's behind me here? That cap belonged to Donald Trump. He signed it for me, and believe it or not, I found pieces of his hair inside. So I have a message for Biden, if you will allow me. We have a minute about. Look, Mr. Biden, he also criticized, by the way, Benjamin Netanyahu. That's why I'm bringing up Biden. Biden, listen to me carefully. You overstepped the line. In Israel, we have elections, and we choose who we want to lead the country. Israel never told America how to fight in Afghanistan or in Iraq. And no, Israeli leader has criticized a sitting U.S. president. Never, never, never. Joe Biden, you have an election coming up. See that cap behind me? That's just a little warning. And I already know, I know the outcome. And you're going to struggle. So instead of criticizing your greatest ally, you should worry about fixing Americans' problem. Did you get that, Nana?
I did get that. We'll just kind of come back and try and have a look at that cap again of Donald Trump that's behind you, because you've got it there in vision. We seem to have some images on that. Yeah, there it is.
So that's the signature. Yeah. And those are pieces of his hair. And I'll tell you what, some people say, oh, it's a wig. I don't believe it's a wig. This means I have Donald Trump's DNA.
Do you think it is? I think it might be a wig. I'm wearing a wig already, but I love my wig. Uri Geller, thank you so much. Always a pleasure to talk to you.
Bless you.
That is Uri Geller. He's live there in Tel Aviv with his thoughts. What are yours? Now let's travel over to America and speak to the host of the Politics People podcast, Paul Duddridge, about that rumour that Nigel Farage might be returning to politics as Donald Trump's envoy to the UK. Paul Duddridge, what do you know about this?
This is so exciting, isn't it? I don't think Nigel Farage has ever left frontline politics, to be fair. I mean, he is the captain of the ship of all right-thinking people in the UK. But yes, the rumour is, and these kind of rumours have got a bit more legs than, they haven't been quashed exactly, is that Trump would give Farage some kind of role in his future cabinet. And the obvious role is something like a trade envoy. What's interesting is that I think Nigel Farage has mentioned in the past that he'd be interested in being ambassador to the UK. But apparently, you can't be a dual citizen and be ambassador to the country with which you're a dual citizen without the consent of the government of that host nation. So if Farage was appointed UK ambassador for the Trump administration, which we all hope happens, he would have to get permission from the probable Labour government to be able to take up that role.
Oh,
and
really?
I can't see them handing it over.
Oh, that's
apparently it's the Vienna Conventions or Accord, some sort of diplomatic rarefied stuff. So we're looking forward to Farage being either trade envoy, economic envoy to either the UK or the EU, and both of them will be welcoming him with bated breath.
Well, I don't know. I think Keir Starmer would probably have to consider it if he was in charge, because if we can get trade deals and good things, if Nigel can do that kind of mediation between the two countries, then it would be in Keir Starmer's best interest, I think, to enable it. But what about Trump? Because he's now finally taken over the Republican Party. Nikki Haley has stepped aside and he has taken over finally.
Yeah, Nikki Haley, that was his rival. This is the actual machinery. It's a bit like what you're having with the Conservative Party. There's the Conservative Party, the parliamentary and the members, etc. The actual Republican Party has always resisted Donald Trump. They've always thought he's a bit sort of déclassé for them. And so his daughter-in-law is now the new basic leader of the Republican Party. And that's the important thing. So, and that's Trump is backseat driver to that. Trump basically now owns the administration of the Republican Party. That makes a huge difference. He's been riding a bicycle with the back brake applied up till now. Nobody that's supposed to be on his side has supported him. We've had something like 40 previous cabinet members saying they won't endorse him for the next election, which is a disgrace, and it shows the kind of turncoats that perhaps inhabit the political class. And so for him to get his hands on finally the actual vehicle of the Republican Party without having to negotiate with it is a huge step forward. But that's his daughter-in-law, Lara, I believe.
Oh, that's good.
Has now become chair.
And what about, he said that he predicts a bloodbath if he doesn't win in November.
Well, this is the thing. This story is important because it's being reported on all kind of news media, mainstream news media, that he's predicting a bloodbath, and this is being spun like he's threatening violence. I watched the speech in Ohio last night, and what he actually said was if the Chinese government tried building car factories in Mexico and sending cars into the US, he'd put a 100% tariff on those cars. It would be a bloodbath for the auto workers. It would be. It is one of the worst, most mendacious uses of media that I've ever seen. They've literally just clipped out, it'll be a bloodbath if I don't get elected. He was talking about the auto industry. And so that's why I think that story is important. This is how pervasive this dishonesty is in the mainstream press.
Well, they're sort of weaponising language. And what about the legal cases that are being delayed?
It's all going Trump's way. It's fantastic. No, we talked about it, and you know the money is a huge issue. That is now coming to crunch. He's only raised like $40 million. But he has actually managed to delay with all the, he's retaliating with lawfare as well. We just saw that in Georgia with Fani Willis. He has slow pedaled and resisted every one of these legal cases, and they all look like they can't really take place now legitimately until after an election. So it looks like any political capital that his opponents wished to exercise by having him convicted before November the 5th. That all looks like it's going to dissipate. It's still possible. There's some very smart people who want to take him down, but we're starting to see that his resistance is beginning to pay off.
Well, I mean, let's hope that it does. But, it'll be interesting to see what happens because, of course, Joe Biden is still there and the Democrats aren't really doing ridiculously bad in considering how bad Joe Biden actually is. But Paul Duddridge, really good to talk to you. Thank you so much. That's Paul Duddridge, host of the Politics People podcast. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. Coming up, my great British debate. Can you trust Labour with our councils? Next, my outside guest. Have you guessed who that might be?
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Well, for the week ahead, it's remaining changeable across the board. For most of the week, it will be fairly mild, but towards the end of the week into the weekend, it does look like it will turn briefly colder. So for the rest of Sunday, still got low pressure generally in charge across the country. But any showers generally fizzling out as the evening goes on. So some fairly clear skies developing across England and Wales, but it doesn't last long in the west. Another band of cloud and rain beginning to work its way in. So by the end of the night, clearest of the skies out towards the east and maybe across Northern Ireland. And for all of us, it is going to be a mild one. Temperatures not falling much lower than 5 to 7 degrees. So into Monday morning, a bright start in the east, but the cloud and rain across central parts will move its way eastwards as the day goes on. Behind it, some drier and brighter weather for a time. This transfers towards the east into the afternoon, and that allows another band of cloud and rain to work its way in from the west. So quite a wet end to the day for Northern Ireland, but for many, another mild day. Temperatures up to 17 degrees in the southeast. Tuesday, for a lot of us, is going to be a rather cloudy picture. Outbreaks of rain moving their way southeastwards. It does brighten up later on in the day across Northern Ireland and Scotland, but on the whole, middle of the week remaining unsettled. But for all of us, temperatures staying on the mild side for the time of year.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
So stay tuned. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Next, I've got my mystery guest. He was one of the singers from Fats and Small. He's also appeared on many reality TV shows. He's pretty famous. He has a very famous ex-partner who works on a rival station. To us here on GB News, who do you think he is? Stay tuned. That is on the way.
We've got cash, treats and a spring shopping spree to be won in a great British giveaway. You could win an amazing £12,345 in tax-free cash. Plus, there's a further £500 of shopping vouchers to spend at your favourite store. We'll also give you a gadget package to use in your garden this spring. That includes a games console, a pizza oven and a portable smart speaker, so you can listen to GB News on the go. For another chance to win the vouchers, the treats and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 29th of March. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
Affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. If you just tuned in, welcome on board. See, it's Nana Nice. It's not where have you been? I'm Nana Akua. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. And for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of those big topics hitting the headlines right now. Coming up in Outside, we talk highs, lows, lessons learned and what comes next on the outside. Now I'll be speaking to a singer, songwriter. He'll be giving you his backstory on his career so far. But he's quite famous, had a famous ex-partner, is the singer of Fats and Small. Do you remember that? Gotta turn around. And then for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, can we trust Labour with our councils? But first, let's get your latest news.
Very good evening to you. It's 5 o'clock. I'm Aaron Armstrong. At least 74 people have been arrested in Russia on the final day of an election. Vladimir Putin is guaranteed to win. Thousands of people have staged a symbolic Noon Against Putin protest, forming long queues at polling stations across the country in an apparent show of dissent. The demonstrations have been supported by Yulia Navalnaya, widow of the Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny. She held one outside the Russian embassy in Berlin, where voters have been encouraged to spoil their ballots. There was a similar demonstration outside Russia's embassy in London. Vladimir Putin has no credible election rivals. Any serious opposition figures are in exile, in prison, or are dead. The Transport Secretary, Mark Harper, says Rishi Sunak will lead the Tories into the next election. Senior Tories have been attempting to downplay claims of a Conservative plot to replace the Prime Minister with Penny Mordaunt. The move, though, would mean a fourth leader of the party in just 5 years. Mr Harper says, unlike Labour, the Conservatives have a plan on delivering for the country.
We've got to show them, by the time of the election, two things. We've got to show them that we've got a plan, the plan is working and it's delivering for them. And I think we can see that it is on inflation and on taxes. We've also then got to show them that the Labour Party doesn't have a plan and will be a big risk. You know, for example, we know the Labour Party wants to spend £28 billion on their green plan. They've hidden the price tag now, but they don't know how to pay for it. That would mean taxes going up.
Well, meanwhile, the Shadow Paymaster General, Jonathan Ashworth, has told GB News the government's priorities are all wrong.
Rishi Sunak is not acting in the national interest. It's reckless, it's irresponsible. He should name the date of a general election and stabilise matters. At the moment, he's more preoccupied with his own leadership and saving his own skin than governing in the national interest. And I think after 14 years, this is a pretty discredited government. He needs to name the date. I mean, but if he doesn't name the date soon, we could have a leadership election soon.
And speaking of the Liberal Democrats' spring conference, leader Sir Ed Davey accused the Prime Minister of giving up.
Who knows? Maybe, despite what he says, Rishi will call the election tomorrow or next week. I certainly hope so. The country can't wait a moment longer to see the back of this terrible government.
Work on the M25 in Surrey is on schedule to reopen for rush hour on Monday morning. National Highways says good progress is being made after an unprecedented closure. There have been big tailblacks reported yesterday on the approach to a 5-mile stretch that is shut between junctions 10 and 11 in Surrey. It's due to open at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. Councils will have to consider whether residents support low-traffic neighbourhoods in their area before going ahead with the schemes. The draft guidance is due to come into force this summer. Now, they're designed, these LTNs, to encourage cycling and walking by limiting driving along side roads, and they include wider pavements and barriers to restrict the vehicles. LTNs often use signs and bollards to stop the traffic on certain routes, as well as local residents. Businesses and emergency services will also have to approve of any further schemes. Steve Harley, best known as the frontman of the British rock band Cockney Rebel, has died at the age of 73.
Come on, Mercedes, to make me smile.
The band enjoyed success in 1975 with the #1 hit Make Me Smile. Steve Harley had continued touring until recently when he had to cancel dates for cancer treatment. His daughter Greta says he died peacefully with his family by his side. And I can tell you what might not be peaceful. Revellers gathering in cities around the world to celebrate St Patrick's Day. In Belfast, thousands of people marched the streets. They turned out in the city centre to enjoy the dancers, the green flags and the usual events in the parade. Colour, song, plenty of dancing as well for the traditional parade in Dublin, where locals vie with tourists along the roads to watch the procession. But no one celebrates being Irish quite like the Americans. Chicago gearing up for the traditional parades there by dyeing the city's river green, as they always do. For the latest stories, you can sign up to our alerts, GB News Alerts. Scan the QR code on your screen or go to our website. Now it's back to Nana.
Good afternoon. It's just coming up to 6 minutes after 5 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We are the People's Channel. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. And for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of those big topics that are hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today is author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton, also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. Still to come. Now, each Sunday at 5, I'm joined by a celebrity, a former MP or someone who's had an extremely interesting career to take a look at life after the job. We talk highs, lows and lessons learned and what comes next on the outside. And today, I'm joined by a British singer-songwriter who's sung on 10 UK singles charts entries. You will not want to miss that. Then, for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, can we trust Labour with our councils? The Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves wrote a pamphlet which endorsed a re-evaluation and revision of existing council tax plans, which was set in 1991, which means that prices could escalate up to £1,200. So should we trust Labour with our councils? As ever, you can email gbviews@gbnews.com or tweet me at gbnews. So each Sunday at 5, I'm joined by a celebrity, a former MP or someone who's had an extremely interesting career to take a look at life after the job. We talk highs, lows and lessons learned and what comes next on the outside. Now, my guest was born in Hong Kong and moved to the United Kingdom with his family when he was just 2 years old. Oh, sweet. In the late 1980s, he featured on the tracks Don't Stop and The Deep. And he also became the singer of Fats and Small after they found they needed a frontman for their hit single Turn Around, which peaked at number 2 on the UK singles charts. I'm sure you've guessed who it is. Of course, I'm delighted to say I'm joined by TV personality and singer-songwriter Ben Afwedu. Ben.
Hello, Nana.
Nice.
It's lovely to meet you, finally.
To meet
I know we've messaged each other on Instagram and Twitter and stuff like that, but to meet you in real life, it's lovely. You're very beautiful.
Too. Oh, you're very beautiful. What a nice man. He's going to be very hot in that coat, but we'll monitor it.
Style.
So, Ben, talk to me then. You talk to me a little bit about your backstory. You were born in Hong Kong.
Born in Hong Kong. A not really simple story. My dad was a merchant seaman and he worked for Nigerian National Shipping Line. And there was a war that broke out in Nigeria, the Biafran War in 1967. I was born 72. So he was estranged from my mum for about 5 years or whatever.
Oh.
And then, and when they met back together again, he went to China to work for ships over there and stuff for a shipping company over there. When I got back together again, I'm the baby of their union.
Ah,
so I'm the second half of the family. So there were 6 of us, 3 older ones, 3 younger ones, and I'm the middle baby, middle child, classic middle child.
Oh, classic middle child. So talk to me about your journey from there. I mean, your schooling journey and then how you found, because you went out with Vanessa. She's a very famous woman. We have to ask you a little bit about you.
Yes,
tell us what you can.
Oh, yeah, totally.
But talk to me about what journey led you to meeting Vanessa. How did you guys meet?
So I would just say that, I grew up in Essex boy, and then went to school, always wanted to be in the music industry. And I was lucky enough to win a rap competition with a DJ called Dave Pearce. And then from that point, I started making records. I made the records in the late 80s with a group called Stacker Humanoid. Then I got into a boy band called Benz. And in Benz, we toured with Take That, and we toured with Boyzone.
Wow.
Boyzone I became very friendly with, and one of my best friends out of Boyzone, one Shane Lynch, but Keith Duffy. And Keith Duffy starred with Vanessa in Big Brother, in the first ever Big Brother, and he introduced me to her at an after party, and then that's how we kind of met. And then we just got together at the OK Magazine Christmas party in 2005.
It's interesting, isn't it? So whilst you were doing your singer-songwriting, was that where you really... Where was your heart? The thing that you wanted to do?
Performing. Stage. At first, I just wanted to be the best. Like in my day, people just didn't want to be famous for the sake of being famous. You wanted to be the best at it. So I wanted to be the best rapper and then the best singer. It was a really sort of simple thing. So singing, and I only ever wrote songs, and I wrote many of them, but I only ever wrote them because I thought everyone wrote their own songs. I didn't know there was such thing as songwriters and singers. So I wrote songs and stuff like that. By the time I got to Fats and Small, they had already written the song. They just wanted someone to sound like an old school soul singer. And luckily, I was blessed with that kind of voice.
That was huge, that song. What was that like for you? Because that must have propelled you. I mean, you've worked with lots of big, famous bands and stuff, but for you to be the front person this time, what was that like?
That song was a complete situation. And it's really, really weird because I was in a boy band signed to a big record label, used in big studios, big budgets and everything like that. And Turnaround was just basically done in a toilet and a bedroom, basically, in Brighton, in Hove. I always remember that. What has my life come to? It was basically that. But yeah, but it just shows you that the smallest things that you do can turn out to be the biggest blessings of your life. And it was a worldwide record. And also, in those days, I mean, we sold 3.2 million records counted. But in those days, there was a lot of white labels going on and stuff like that. So we probably did, I reckon now, we probably did about 5 million records.
So white labels, for those who don't know, or what are they, copies of the original?
Yeah,
they're not with a label.
Yeah, they're almost like bootlegs.
Yeah.
It's like people hearing them on the radio and then sort of transferring it to vinyl.
That's got to be one of my most favourite tracks of my youth.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, that was such a good track. It was a very good track.
Yeah.
So after that, so you did all that, you met Vanessa, then things sort of went quiet from you. What were you doing in that story
You know
time?
what? I just...
What went on?
It was really weird. I kind of had a bit of a career change, and I suppose, you know, she was kind of doing more sort of magazine-y, reality TV, that kind of thing. And it was just... And I'd kind of, you know, I'd done Turnaround, and I kind of reached the peak of whatever it was I was looking for. And I just kind of slowed down. I was kind of ready to settle down. I was ready to get married. It was that kind of thing. So I was just kind of taking it easy, really. And then we used to do a lot of, you know, game shows and TV shows, and then my life sort of became like that. And I think that at that time as well, I just think that, you know, that whole being a celebrity thing kind of just grew. That became people's jobs. So no longer do they have to be able to sing or dance or do anything. It's just like, just be famous for the sake of being famous. And I think, I mean, that's how that world's always appeared to me.
I think I remember seeing you on Millionaire. Did you do Millionaire?
Yeah, we did really well.
And you answered so many of the questions. I'm like,
I answered all the questions.
Clever. You did, didn't you?
I answered all the questions.
And I was like,
saved their life on that show.
You really did. And I remember thinking, wow, he's really clever.
Yeah, no, she's a very intelligent lady.
Oh, yeah, but you answered all the questions, though.
Yeah, totally. That's what I mean. I'm not like... I come from a family of academics anyway.
Yeah. So if you hadn't gone into music, would you have gone into something academic? And if you had, what would that have been?
I don't think I would have gone into anything academic. I've always liked people. You know, I'm a people's person. And actually, before that, just before I got into music, I was a salesman. Clothing salesman. Yeah. And I just used to... But it was just the fact of meeting people, and I think being a frontman of the band is the same sort of thing. It's you, and like my real gift is performing, so it's just about a connection with people. And so I probably would have just been, you know, high up in a company. I would have gone into sales and just gone... I can sell anything. Yeah. That's what I think.
Yeah, I think you would convince me. I'd probably buy stuff. I'd be like, oh, you can easy.
You too kind.
You can sell anything, couldn't you? And so, of course, with you and Vanessa, it all ended. What can you tell us? Because I know people don't like to talk too much about that. You have moved on. But for those who don't know what happened...
I mean, to shorten it, it was a 17-year relationship. And it wasn't going anywhere, basically. It was going around in circles. You know, when we met, I wanted to get married. I wanted to have children. If we couldn't have children, I wanted to adopt children. And she just didn't really want any of that. And then that was it. But I didn't find that out until about 10 years in, really. And so it was kind of like there was a lot of downhill things. And the relationship was kind of winding down. Yeah. And that's pretty much what it was. It was almost like... Although people see the outside and it was just like, yo, you were texting someone and this and that. But the whole thing, the 17 years of my life, it was just from where I'm looking at it, it was a bit of a lie for me, personally.
But what, towards the end?
Yeah, well, the whole way through.
Really?
It wasn't a lie. We were in love. I was in love with her. But what I mean is that it was a lie, as in I was gaining nothing from it. My family was saying, what are you actually doing? Are you ever going to get married? I mean, what's going on? She didn't want to get married. No. And she didn't want to adopt any children. All these things that she said that she wanted to do, and she didn't want to do that. And it's just like... And it was over in an afternoon.
Oh, but then there were reports that you were texting someone. Or...
Yes, there was that. But all these things, you know, with therapy and stuff like that, you kind of have to look at why.
Why you were doing that.
Yeah, why was I doing that? And, you know, subsequently soul-searching for the last 12 months, it was kind of... I was unhappy. I was just unhappy and bored. And it was just going around in circles. And it's hard being in a family where the children are growing up, having boyfriends, then getting married, then having children, and you're just sort of in the same place. It's just, there's no movement.
And obviously Vanessa's not here to sort of give her side of the story, but, we've brought you here, and it's really... it's really good.
It's about me, don't worry about her.
you. It's good for you to talk about how you feel. But I know you got involved with some men's mental health campaigns and stuff. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, the mental health thing, I mean, I kind of was aware of it, but it really affected me last year because I was really rubbished in the press and on social media and stuff like that. Yeah, and my mental health took a real bashing, and that's what started to appeal to me. And until something, I mean, we should all be aware of stuff, but when something happens to you and you see it firsthand and you feel it, I mean, some of last year I just didn't feel like I was present. I was in the room, but I kind of wasn't in the room, with my mind. My mind was just running everywhere, and that was due to the media backlash, helped by Vanessa.
She's not here to defend herself, and she might not.
I'm joking.
Might not have been. That's not fair.
But yeah, so that was... my mental health took a toll for the worst. But like I said, I've had a bit of therapy and stuff like that, and I'm back firing. And
you're firing all cylinders. What are you doing? What's going on? What are you firing doing?
Well, at the moment, it's Prostate Awareness Month in March and stuff like that, and it affects black people black and Afro-Caribbean people at a very high percentage. It's almost double what it does from any other race and stuff, or ethnicity and stuff like that. So I'm kind of done a campaign where there's a part of my anatomy that will be on a massive billboard.
Oh God, no!
Outside the Emirates Stadium.
I think we did. I don't know whether we can play it. We did. I did send it to my producer to have a look at it, but it's a very simple campaign, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a very simple campaign, and hopefully you'll know what it is when you see it. And I think anything to help and stuff like that. And I think that men of a certain age. I mean, I'm over 45.
You're
over 50.
How old are you?
I'm 51.
Oh, you're younger than me, you little young man.
No. But
Hang on, you didn't respond quite well. You're supposed to say, you don't look older than...
You don't. You don't. And when you said in your youth, that's...
No, it's too late. It's too late. You can't do the comeback after you've been told to do it as well. It's not going to get you anywhere, man. So you're doing this campaign.
Yeah, and that's something that's really, really close to my heart. I think that men should always go and get their prostate. And your prostate enlarges as you get older, and you should go and get it checked. It really affects the black community. A lot of men, are just scared of, their anatomy and going to see a doctor and having that kind of done. So it's just spreading awareness about that. So that's one of the things that I'm really passionate about. And so hopefully the picture of my anatomy will be well received.
You'll have to look out for that, people. Yeah. It is there, and I think it will be well received, actually, to be fair. And you are releasing a new single.
Yes, I've got a couple of singles out. I've got one single out at the moment, which is on a compilation album, which I did with Mick Brown. And Mick Brown it's called Revisited, like Reloaded. So it's loads of 80s and 90s singers, Junior Giscombe, David Grant, Cary Grant.
Oh, wow.
Also, Sunita's on it and stuff like that. Yeah, no, it's a fantastic album. And I did a cover of an example record called Change the Way You Kiss Me, which is quite apt.
But Change the Way You Kiss Me.
Yeah, so I did that, and that's out now, which you can sort of download. And it's rediscovered, the album's called, sorry, slipped my tongue. And then I have my own stuff coming, my own better faded material coming. I've got it's actually a reimagined version of a song by PM Dawn called Set Adrift on Memory Bliss.
I love that.
Yeah, it's a beautiful song.
It's a beautiful
sampling the Spandau Ballet, True. Record and stuff, and it's a really, really beautiful song. And it just really, and I'm kind of just in my own zone, kind of doing stuff like that. I've got many more records I'm working on, but they're the two ones that are really coming, and I think Set Adrift will be a massive... Yeah, it's got a massive response on my Instagram.
It's such a lovely track, and give it a bit of a remix on there.
It's just very floaty.
Yeah.
It's very genteel.
Set Adrift,
Mary Bliss are you.
Baby, you send me.
You sound right. Nice voice, you're in good voice now. You're in good voice.
I have not got a good voice. It's lies. So if people want to follow you on Instagram or whatever, or catch up with some of the stuff you're doing, where can they go? Where can they find out more about you?
Yeah, just go onto my Instagram. I mean, that is, that's almost like the new telly, isn't it? And you can try out records on there and stuff like that. Before, you could find out if a record works, you have to go to a nightclub and get DJs to play it. Now you just stick it on your Instagram, and the response will show you if people like it or not.
Yeah.
So that's good. And if people don't like it, you just don't get a lot of hits. And if they do, you do.
What would you say to anyone as a big life lesson to you? What has been your big life lesson that you could pass on, a pearl of wisdom to anybody listening now?
Don't waste your time trying to convince yourself something's happening when it's not.
Right, Ben Afwedu, thank you so much. Lovely to talk to you. Thank you so much. That is the brilliant Ben Afwedu. He's a singer and TV personality. That was Outside. Coming up, I'll be joined by my Great British Voices, their opportunity to tell us what they think about the topics we're discussing. But next, it's time for the Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking, can we trust Labour with our councils?
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Absenteeism. And parents whose children miss a week or more of school face increased fines in a government drive to tackle absence.
This is another one of those government policies which has done nothing to improve the education of our children. In fact, since this was originally introduced some 10 years ago, the educational standards for our children, the 11-year-olds who can't read when they go up to primary school, have got worse and worse and worse. So it's not working. So what do? They just increase the fine, like that may make it work. Most of the parents who get fined are taking their kids out so they can take them on a holiday before the holiday companies push the prices up. And frankly, as a parent, if I've got a £600 discount on my holiday versus a £60 fine, I'm going to go for the £60
You'll suffer the fine.
Yeah.
Let's not forget the other huge absence that children had recently during COVID. Schools were closed for months and months on end. Online learning was really not making up for that. So how could, it's very difficult for the government to say it was fine for us to take your kids out of school for months, but if you take them off for a few days to go to Disneyland, then you are the worst parent ever and you should
But also, it's the pandemic that caused some of the problems with absenteeism now.
Absolutely.
Because the mental health issues that some of these children now have.
And there are tens of thousands of children, they call them ghost children, that have simply disappeared from the school register. So it would be nice. It's really, really scary situation. I'm not saying that the government is, taking great measures.
Well, I think one of their plans is to have a national register, which would help with that.
Which would definitely help. But I think they can't deal with the real problem, so they're going after actually perfectly, decent parents who are just taking the odd day off, to save money, frankly.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task. This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Good afternoon. It's coming up to 24 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News. We are the People's Channel. Don't forget as well, you can download that GB News app and you can pick up all the shows that are going on the channel. But right now, if you just tuned in, welcome. I'm Nana Akua. And it's time now for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, can we trust Labour with our councils? Millions of Britons would see their council tax hiked up under plans previously advocated by Labour's Rachel Reeve. The Shadow Chancellor wrote a pamphlet in 2018 which endorsed a re-evaluation and revision of existing council tax plans, which was set in 1991. According to the Sunday Telegraph, a revision of the banding could cost 4 million households £1,200 a year. That's £100 a month. A Labour spokesperson has since said that there are no plans for re-evaluation in the first term of government. run by Sir Keir Starmer, but would not rule it out completely. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, can we trust Labour with our councils? And obviously a lot of the Labour councils spend way more money than some of the Conservative ones. Joining me now to discuss this, founding chairman of Global Britain, Aman Bogle, and also former Labour MP Bill Rammell. Bill, I'm going to start with you. Bill, this is what has been touted. It was written, the article was in the Telegraph today, so it sounds as though Labour are revisiting it, and a lot of people know that a lot of Labour councils seem to spend more money in general than the Conservative ones. So can they be trusted?
Yes, they can, by the Tory right. You know, this was a pamphlet written before Rachel who was chair of the Business Select Committee. I actually think she's right. We do need a... It hasn't happened since 1991. Tony Blair first committed to it in committed to it. It's never happened. It's out of date. But it made it explicitly clear there are no plans in government to do this.
In the first month?
Because relatively poorer households and wealthier households are paying less. But the party has made it clear it's got no plans to do.
But it's interesting, though, because the piece that I read in the Telegraph today was saying that if they did, their plan would be about £100 extra a month, so £1,200. And Labour are well known for just raising taxes. I know the Conservatives have not done a good job. But, Amal, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, look, thanks for having me on the show, Nana. Look, I think it's a very simple matter. Labour simply cannot be trusted with local taxpayers, councils' tax money for one very simple reason. Look at Europe's biggest council, Birmingham, £2.9 billion in debt and it's bust. Croydon, Labour-run council, £1.3 billion in debt, mismanaged and bust. Slough, bust again. Nottingham City, bust again. And let's not forget the Lib Dems, Woking, £2.6 billion in debt and bust. And of course, the biggest glorified Labour local councillor running as mayor, Sadiq Khan, he's bust TfL many a time. So I think the people's council tax bills speak for themselves. And let's not forget that very famous image doing the rounds in the last local election. You know, same street, same row of houses on the Wandsworth side of the Conservative-run council. The council tax was, what, £800, and the same street, same house on the other side, Lambeth, Labour-run council, £1,500.
Well, you see, that's the problem, isn't it? And I think people do have a lasting memory of the Labour Party spending lots of money on councils. I'm just concerned because I know it looks like the Labour Party will win the election. I can't see the Conservatives after the mess they're making of it. I don't actually think they deserve to win. It's not rocket science. They've done such a bad job. But, Bill, I'm just concerned that Labour are very bad and have been notoriously bad at spending our money at council level. And as Aman pointed out, a lot of those bus councils are Labour councils.
As well, it's simply not true that Labour is bad at managing council finance. Parties of all political persuasions that are in financial jeopardy, terms cut in local government funding that this Conservative government has implemented. Government Association, which it has a Conservative majority, explicitly says that councils of all political persuasions are in their biggest financial crisis for decades because of that massive cut in local government funding. That's why we have pressure on council budgets, not because of the particular policies of any particular party. It's because of the massive austerity that the Tories have driven onto our local councils. And we can see that everywhere with cuts in really important services like social care, in the potholes in our roads, driven by the Conservative government.
But wasn't austerity practically the part of caused by whilst the Labour Party were in government and then it was handed to the Tory party? Aman?
No, sorry, that's really not true. When we entered the banking crisis in 2008, Labour had the lowest debt to GDP ratio of any country in the G7. The only reason we had a financial crisis was because of the banking crisis. And, you know, at that stage, the Tory opposition supported Labour's spending plans. So it's a rewriting of history to say that...
No, but you can't say that when it goes bad, it's not our fault, and when it goes good, it is our fault.
Exactly.
I mean, sorry, Aman.
A couple of things then, and I think Phil was in the last New Labour government, and I think it's pretty obvious where New Labour left that very famous, letter in the Treasury box at the Treasury saying, "Sorry, there's no more money left." I mean, that's the basic fact. And look. Yes, there are pressures on local councils, but the same pressures exist for all councils across the country. I mean, look, the next council that are looking to go bust are Manchester, Liverpool, Sheffield, Leeds. Those are all Labour-run councils, and they're badly run councils. On the other hand, I would argue that you've got some really well-run local councils. Look at, for example, the London Borough of Bexley. You know, a really well Conservative-run council, which is spending £1 million a day on adult social care, on cleaning streets, on local education, all the rest of it. It's facing the same pressures. It's just competency versus socialism, treating others' hard-earned money as, to be splurged and without any accountability.
Well, listen,
then how comes the Conservative-run local government association says councils are in financial crisis because of central government cuts, and they say that that's councils of all political persuasions. This is what the Tory-run local government association is saying.
Well, the figures speak for themselves, and the figures speak for themselves. Michael Gove has given a 7.5% uprise in local government funding this year, but the facts speak for themselves. You can't have Labour councils paying hundreds of thousands of pounds to diversity coordinators, while 117 million pounds, 17 million pounds Birmingham Council spent on paying private taxi firm, taking children £200 a day for 3 miles to home and school. That's what we are facing with Labour on council.
Final quick word to you.
So the Tories would they?
Well, listen, you went a bit quiet there. It sounded like a great point, but sadly your mic sort of cut at that point. Thank you so much, Aman Vogel, and also former Labour MP Bill Rammell. Thank you so much. This is GB News. What do you think? I'm Nana Akua. Coming up, we'll continue with this debate, and I'm asking, can we trust Labour with our councils? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton, also broadcasting and motoring journalist. Gosh, they put that in, Danny Kelly. But first, let's get your latest news with Aaron Armstrong.
It's 5:32. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. Thousands of Russians have been protesting against Vladimir Putin on the final day of voting in a presidential election he is certain to win. At least 74 arrests have been made in Russia as demonstrators staged a symbolic Noon Against Putin protest, forming long queues at polling stations across the country in an apparent show of dissent. Now, they were advised not to carry banners or shout slogans for fear of detention. The demonstrations have been supported by Yulia Navalnaya, the widow of the Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny. She was outside the Russian embassy in Berlin, and there was a similar demonstration outside Russia's embassy in London. Putin is certain to win another 6 years. He has no credible election rivals. Rishi Sunak will lead the Tories into the next election. That's according to the Transport Secretary Mark Harper. Senior Conservative MPs have been attempting to downplay claims of a Tory plot to replace the Prime Minister with Penny Mordaunt. The move would mean a fourth leader of the party in just 5 years. Work on the M25 in Surrey is apparently on schedule to reopen for Monday morning rush hour. National Highways says progress has been made after the unprecedented closure. Tailbacks have been reported on the approach to the 5-mile stretch between junctions 10 and 11 in Surrey. 6 a.m. tomorrow morning is when it's scheduled to reopen. And Steve Harley, best known as the frontman of the British rock band Cockney Rebel, has died at the age of 73.
Come up and see me to make me smile.
Well, that was the big hit they had in 1975. It got to #1, Make Me Smile. Steve Harley was touring up until recently, still playing that music, but cancelled dates to have treatment for cancer. His daughter Greta says he died peacefully with his family by his side. And you can get the latest on all of our stories by scanning the QR code to get the GB News alerts or go to our website.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 p.m.
I've got an idea. I think that all 30-year-olds should be given £10,000 from the banks of baby boomers. We've got a situation in this country now where millennials are the first generation in modern times expecting to be poorer than their parents. We, as 30-year-olds like me, are half as likely to own a house as people my age 30 years ago. In fact, the cost of a home in Britain compared to average incomes has as big a gap today as it did, wait for it, in the 1860s. It is a Dickensian situation.
Now, I'm sorry about the housing crisis for your generation.
You're not, though, are you?
No,
because you're profiting from it.
I'm profiting from it. Don't be ridiculous.
The house prices now, compared to that period.
If this is the case, Benjamin,
have incomes gone up that fast?
To penalise and punish the elderly when they have worked all their lives to put into the system and say it's your fault, whingy, whiny, we're going to be envious.
We're being punished.
No, well, by the politics, so be the change you want to see in the world. Be the change.
I am actually, and I'm about to tell you about the change I want to see in the world.
Are you good? As long as it's not whining about it.
I'm going to stop whining about it, but we are being taken advantage of at the moment to profit, to help the old. Most of taxpayers' money is spent in two departments, the NHS, so the health department, and the Department for Work and Pensions. Those departments disproportionately serve the older population. Now, I've got no issue with that, but let's not pretend that it is not young working people that is paying for the public services for old people. So actually, we are having it hard, and I just look at the future, and we see a future of perpetually higher taxes to pay for this increasing ageing population, a shrinking labour force, and you're here saying we've got nothing to worry about.
The young stop voting for mass immigration parties. The young stop voting for parties
just
that
to point out,
build houses.
Immigrants actually pay taxes, pensioners don't.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From 10 a.m. every Saturday, we want to make you think and we want to make you laugh.
So we will give you all the top stories.
Now we start with a story that has shocked the nation this week.
But we're also going to make it light and fun and bring some entertainment in to make your Saturday morning nice and restful.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon and welcome to GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. If you've just tuned in, you've only got 21 minutes to go with me, Nana Akua. We are live on TV, online and on digital radio, and it is time now for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, can we trust Labour with our councils? Millions of Britons would see their council tax hiked up under plans previously advocated by Labour's Rachel Reeves. According to the Sunday Telegraph, a revision of the banding could cost 4 million households £1,200 a year, which is, well, £100 a month on top. A Labour spokesperson has since said that there are no plans for a re-evaluation in the first term of a government. They haven't said at all, but in the first term of government run by Sir Keir Starmer, but would not rule it out. Of course they haven't. Would not rule it out completely. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, can we trust Labour with our councils, seeing as loads of them seem to be going bust? Let's see what my panel make of that. Joining me, author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton, and also broadcaster and motoring journalist Danny Kelly. Did you ask them for that?
No.
Who asked them
no,
for that?
I wear two hats with this fabulous outfit, and today I'm a commentator and a broadcaster. Motoring journalist when you want to talk to me about cars.
So you're just... OK, well, that's two hats.
And he two separate hats. Today's hat is the broadcaster and journalist.
He sells super-duper cars.
That's two hats in one.
Two separate
And he
hats.
sells super-duper cars.
Yes.
That's three altogether now. You're getting more hats
all right.
than anyone.
I know, it's great to have so many hats.
It's good to have
Keep your head warm.
fingers in different pies.
For a bald man.
Danny Danny Kelly, what do you think about it?
Do you know, I had my council tax... The irony of this, only yesterday I had my council tax demands for the next 12 months. And, do you know, what do we get for our council tax? We get the police, we get the fire service, we get our bins emptied. If you have children...
If you're lucky.
You'll get education, you'll get the potholes filled.
If you're lucky.
Yeah, if you're lucky. And the state of some of these roads, I often scratch my bald head and wonder where the...
know where you're going to go.
No, I wondered what was coming.
I often scratch my big bald head and wonder whether I'm getting good value for money for my however much it is a month. And I'm not sure I do. So if they want another 1,200 knicker off me...
That's 100 quid a...
That's a lot of dough.
That's just a lot.
That's a lot of dough. And what really annoys me are people who play the system, who don't have to pay council tax, and I and every other hard-working individual who plays everything by the book, who pays the correct corporation tax, the VAT amount if you're self-employed. And I know that people who are just sort of swinging the system and they're not working, I know they can work and they get free council tax, they get help towards their rent, and it makes me sick. And and listen, is this going to get worse under a Labour government? Because we know that Labour prioritise people who can't work. It's whether they can or can't work, whether it's a legitimate concern.
Christine Hamilton.
Labour, they look at people in big houses and they think they've got lots and lots of money, let's get it from them. Council tax is supposed to pay for local services. That's what it's for. It's not just an excuse to grab money from people that they think have got it. That's what it's for. Danny has listed them. I mean, we don't have any street lighting. We obviously don't have any children being educated, etc. Our potholes are absolutely... We get very, very little for our council tax. We're in the top band, so we pay huge whack, and it's gone up as much as they could put it up. Here, fine. But it was tried once before, this, to try and rejig the system, wasn't it? It was called the poll tax.
Oh, yes.
And that fell absolutely... The Tory government fell flat on their face over trying to bring some sort of different... It is to pay for local services, and therefore, yes, some sliding scale, so people in the bigger houses pay more. But what about the business where you've got one person in a bigger house, a widow on her own, etc.? It's very, very difficult. And I think they will tinker with the basic principle at their peril.
Well, my council, my council are trying to... They're going to charge you now a subscription for your green bin. I'm like, you come every
I
few
pay
weeks,
it.
and now you want a subscription for the green bin. What the hell am I paying for?
But what you need, people need to think about this when they're voting for their local councils. We, in London, our flat was in Wandsworth, and it was the lowest council tax in the whole of London, and it was completely brilliant. Labour get in, and suddenly it goes whooshing up.
I pay the green bin
People need
tax.
to know that.
Do you?
Yeah, I think it's gone up, I think it's about 60 knicker a year now, or 60 knicker for, say, 4 months, because that's when you use it the most. But our neighbours who don't pay it, obviously they won't have their green wheelie bins emptied. And that was only introduced 2 or 3 years ago, and it's a Labour council.
People don't see... First of all, not enough people vote in local council elections, so please, get out. They don't. They just think it doesn't matter. It does matter.
Well, maybe there's a calling for you and Danny to be local councillors.
Oh, no way. I've never, ever stood for elective office, and I'm never going to.
What do you mean, knocking on your door?
Oh, no, that was the parish council. Jackie, there's no authority, Jackie Weaver.
Oh, that's
It'll
right.
be a bit like that.
Yeah.
No authority, Jackie Weaver.
I don't want to sit on committees and all that sort of thing. I just want to get on quietly with my life.
This show, there is nothing without you and your views. Let's welcome some of our Great British voices. Their opportunity to be on the show and tell us what they think about the topics we're discussing. I've got 4 of you. Right, let's go. Let's start with Gareth from Snowdonia. Can we trust Labour with our council tax?
I don't trust anybody with my money anymore, to be honest with you. Really disappointed. We've got potholes. You know, we've got our rubbish going once a month on our big bins, once every 3 weeks, sorry. We're recycling everything here. And, yeah, value for money is not something that we're going to be having. I think, you know, we've been under a Labour government in Wales for many, many years. And I don't see any difference from anywhere across the country, doesn't matter what, you know, parties running it. I think it's important that we start to get value for money in everything we do. Yeah. You know, from the green bins, if you're paying 60 knicker for a few months, well, that's not fair. Maybe we should privatise this and get a business to come up and pick it for 30 quid.
It'll be even worse, Gareth. You know it'll just get more and more expensive. They'll just take your eyes out. David Balm in Watford.
Do I trust them? Not as far as I could, proverbially. The council want more money because they're bankrupt, But then if you look at what they're spending their money on, not on potholes, not on education, they're closing libraries down, they're closing down amenities so they can employ woke agendas, because that's what they think the public want, or they're told the public want. What we actually want are councils who actually look after us, the residents, to take our bins. I believe that the council around here have actually decided, actually, we're going to put it back a year. There won't be a green bin levy because the take-up apparently has been so bad, they realise it wasn't worth it. So all that happens, there'll be fly tippers.
Of course there will.
So get your act in order. Labour will be the worst for anything when it comes to local.
Lee Harris in Bristol.
In my view, Nana, Labour can't be trusted to run a bath, let alone a council. And considering the colossal wreckage Labour leave behind them whenever they're in charge, I dread to think what they will do to this country. And sadly, we're about to find out. You know, the good thing is the closer we get to an election, the more light's going to be shed on Labour's unfunded spending commitments. And this is what we're seeing with this controversial proposal from Rachel Reeves. You know, Labour say they're not going to raise taxes, so instead they kind of disguise it as a council tax revaluation, which could, as you've already said, cost millions of people an extra £1,200 a year. And this is during a cost of living crisis and the highest tax burden in over 50 years.
Well, they'll only...
Labour haven't rule it out, Nana, but they've started the process in Labour-run Wales, so I expect the same to happen here.
They started the process years before they're even in power, so we know that it's a process they've been thinking about. Alan McNeely in Grimsby. Alan.
Good afternoon, Nana.
Good afternoon.
First of all, happy St. Patrick's Day to you all. Hope you're all having a great day. As for the councils, we've got a Conservative-led council up here. It's not too bad. It's not perfect, but they do try. I'd be horrified if Labour got in because they will just take money left, right and centre and probably provide a very poor service.
Well, we shall see if they do win the election. We will find out. Thank you so much to Gareth Wynne-Jones from Snowdonia, David Balm in Watford, Lee Harris from Bristol, Alan McNeely in Grimsby. Always a pleasure. My great British voices. He's there with a Guinness. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up, my mini debate. Is it time for Kate to come clean?
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Well, for the week ahead, it's remaining changeable across the board. For most of the week, it will be fairly mild, but towards the end of the week, into the weekend, it does look like it will turn briefly colder. So for the rest of Sunday, still got low pressure generally in charge across the country. But any showers generally fizzling out as the evening goes on. So some fairly clear skies developing across England and Wales, but it doesn't last long in the west. Another band of cloud and rain beginning to work its way in. So by the end of the night, clearest of the skies out towards the east and maybe across Northern Ireland. And for all of us, it is going to be a mild one. Temperatures not falling much lower than 5 to 7 degrees. So into Monday morning, a bright start in the east, but the cloud and rain across central parts will move its way eastwards as the day goes on. Behind it, some drier and brighter weather for a time. This transfers towards the east into the afternoon, and that allows another band of cloud and rain to work its way in from the west. So quite a wet end to the day for Northern Ireland, but for many, another mild day. Temperatures up to 17 degrees in the southeast. Tuesday, for a lot of us, is going to be a rather cloudy picture. Outbreaks of rain moving their way southeastwards. It does brighten up later on in the day across Northern Ireland and Scotland, but on the whole, middle of the week remaining unsettled. But for all of us, temperatures staying on the mild side for the time of year.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Right, so this is coming up to 51 minutes after 5 o'clock. If you've just tuned in, be quiet, Christine.
I'm so sorry.
I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. Those are, of course, Christine Hamilton and Danny Kelly joining me. Coming up in the mini debate, is it time for Kate to come clean? A lot of people are saying that this is what's been happening. There have been rumours circulating as something's wrong with the picture. Photogate blew up the number of questions about the Princess of Wales' health and the issues, and her friends have come forward saying that she is likely to address them in the future on her own terms. So is it time for the Princess Catherine of Wales to come clean as to what's going on with the photo? All right, Danny, I'll go with you then, as soon as you do a funny laugh.
Some people believe that she's had her face photoshopped onto somebody else's body. Now, I would like to... I'm not part of this conspiracy theory, but some people reckon that it's a bloke's throat because he or she has got...
Danny.
I just said I'm not part of it. Good. But because she's got an Adam's apple. And as we know, women don't have Adam's apples.
It's just a shadow of something.
No, it's definitely a big lump. Anyway, look, I'm not part of this theory.
You just said you weren't, but then you elaborated it with a big lump.
But so... so...
Look.
What have you got your hands like that for?
Go on, Christine Hamilton.
Hands on the desk. She was obviously, and she's admitted it, the thing was photoshopped. She's entitled to her privacy, of course she is, but the Paris have allowed this thing to get a life of its own, and the people who are out, the journalists, they are never going to leave it alone until they know what is wrong with her. There are sort of two big theories going around, not going to mention them, don't worry, neither of which is very palatable and neither of which I can understand she would want the public to know about. Now, it may be something else quite different. If it's what you might call something normal, like prostate, the King told us it was prostate. If it's something as routine as that, why hasn't she told us? Because there's speculation.
People
and then this photograph has just ramped the whole thing up.
But people will be so disappointed when they find out there's literally nothing to it. It's
no, I know.
I think it's so absurd.
She's just
twisted
intestine or something.
It's probably something like that, or Lady
something
Victoria
boring.
thought she may have had Crohn's or something like that.
On the TV, she hasn't got an Adam's apple there. Look at it. It's a woman's throat there.
So the one in the picture, it's a shadow. It's
there's a theory that her whole body has been photoshopped.
It does look a bit elongated.
It does, doesn't it?
Listen, the more I look at it, I thought it's been silly, but I'm falling into it, the trap now as well.
Yeah.
But now it's time for Supplement Sunday, where my panel and I discuss some of the stories that have caught their eye. Danny, I'm going to start with you.
Oh, this is a great story. So Wendy's is a burger chain in America. They've got a few outlets in the UK, and the manager created this fake employee. So she went through a hiring process, and she hired someone who doesn't exist, and she pocketed the money. And she went... It was such an elaborate ruse, she actually had her clocking in and out all the shifts for 150-odd shifts. She pocketed $20,000 US dollars, and she had to clock in clock out over 158 days or something like that. What an incredibly elaborate scam.
How was she discovered?
I don't know. She's in prison now.
Well, this is Lloyd's, who are an absolute woke laughingstock because they have advised their staff to avoid using the word widow because it might trigger unhelpful memories for people, forgetting the fact that they own the very high-profile insurance company Scottish Widows. And they also say they mustn't use guinea pig because that's offensive to vegans. They mustn't use headless chicken. I mean, it's absurd.
It's absurd. Well, listen, on today's show, I've been asking, is it time for the Tories to focus on policy over personality? And according to our Twitter poll, 96% of you say yes, only 4% of you say no. I've got to say thank you so much to my panel author and broadcaster, Christine Hamilton. Christine, thank you very much.
Pleasure as always.
And also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly.
Thank you.
And a huge thank you to you for joining me at home with your company as well. I look forward to seeing you next week, same time, same place, 3 o'clock on Saturday. I will leave you with the weather. Have a fabulous week.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Well, for the week ahead, it's remaining changeable across the board. For most of the week, it will be fairly mild, but towards the end of the week into the weekend, it does look like it will turn briefly colder. So for the rest of Sunday, still got low pressure generally in charge across the country. But any showers generally fizzling out as the evening goes on. So some fairly clear skies developing across England and Wales, but it doesn't last long in the west. Another band of cloud and rain beginning to work its way in. So by the end of the night, clearest of the skies out towards the east and maybe across Northern Ireland. And for all of us, it is going to be a mild one. Temperatures not falling much lower than 5 to 7 degrees. So into Monday morning, a bright start in the east, but the cloud and rain across central parts will move its way eastwards as the day goes on. Behind it, some drier and brighter weather for a time. This transfers towards the east into the afternoon, and that allows another band of cloud and rain to work its way in from the west. So quite a wet end to the day for Northern Ireland, but for many, another mild day. Temperatures up to 17 degrees in the southeast. Tuesday, for a lot of us, is going to be a rather cloudy picture. Outbreaks of rain moving their way southeastwards. It does brighten up later on in the day across Northern Ireland and Scotland, but on the whole, middle of the week remaining unsettled. But for all of us, temperatures staying on the mild side for the time of year.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the high